He was strangled for being a newcomer. The student showed no mercy because he was an orphan. In this world, the weak do not survive. A war against the dragons pushed the world to the brink of collapse. But the ARC project was activated, a military academy created to train the strongest warriors. Lee Han was just a child, yet he stood out for his strength and intelligence until he underwent a forbidden genetic process. In an experiment where only 1 out of 10 survived, he lived. And after that, he trained 100 times harder than everyone else to become the greatest dragon slayer in this world. Inside one of the helicopters, a boy sits with his seatbelt on. He stares at his fate ahead. A voice is surprised that Lee Han, leader of the war orphans, is only 10 years old. The boy is in an interrogation room with his identification on the table. An officer says not to worry because he is not going to jail, and asks if he has ever heard of a place known as ARC. The boy asks if he means the Institute for Psychers, and if that means he is one of them. The officer states that the boy is smart and will become humanity's savior, promising he will no longer starve. But Lee Han replies that only he will be satisfied, not his younger siblings. He then demands that if he goes to ARC, they must take care of his siblings with food, clothes, a place to sleep, and school. The man stared at him surprised by the condition imposed. Then he agrees to take responsibility and care for the children. The boy watches him closely after hearing the answer. The officer imposes the condition that the deal only stands as long as he remains in ARC as a psycher. Lee Han replies that of course he understands. With his back turned, he prepares to leave the helicopter with a bag on his shoulders. The aircraft has landed on the site. Lee Han gets off the helicopter alone. The officer informs him that there are rankings for psychic abilities, and his is not one of the highest, and advises him to do everything he can to survive for his siblings, while the boy walks away. Lee Han finally arrives in front of ARC's enormous building, and clenches his fists, preparing for what comes next. But a noise draws his attention to the side. He observes a group of boys yelling for someone to go back to where he came from. One of them insults another boy, calling him a crybaby dragged here by force. The boy in question is crying on the ground. The blonde-haired youth states that it's because of recruits like him that he is treated the same way, and the boy on the ground reacts to his words. The others around ask who he thinks he is to speak like that. With his eyes shining, he calls them foolish idiots, and states that his starting point is different from theirs. He reveals himself as a trained psyker while levitating a stone. The group is shocked to see a psychic ability being used for the first time. He then turns to the boy on the ground and asks if he will be sent home for being useless, and concludes by saying that in the future, he will still thank him. He throws the stone toward the fallen boy, shouting for him to disappear, but Lee Han intervenes and catches the stone. He comments that the attack was slow, and that it would have been better to just throw the stone directly. The psyker stares at him and asks who the hell he is. Lee Han introduces himself as his etiquette teacher. The crowd around them cheers, encouraging a fight between the two. He then advances toward his opponent. Someone quickly calls them idiots. Suddenly, an instructor approaches and the crowd parts. He stares at the two boys seriously, and orders both of them to step forward. The instructor demands to know the names of the two boys. The blonde youth introduces himself as Del Simon, while the other responds that he is Lee Han. The instructor notices that Simon seems to have received training and asks if his special ability has already manifested. Del Simon replies that for now he can only use telekinesis, and Lee Han does not understand what a special ability is. With a punch, the instructor strikes Simon in the stomach. He calls him trash for acting arrogantly with such a low level of ability. Then he turns to Lee Han and confirms his name, and praises him for defending the weak, but hits him with a punch, saying that if he is not as capable as Simon, he will be worse than trash. Lying on the ground, Lee Han hears the warning that if they cannot use telekinesis in 3 weeks, they will be expelled. The man introduces himself as John Red, the instructor who will turn them into psychic warriors capable of fighting dragons. He ends the introductions and orders everyone to run around the training field until he says to stop. John Red then gives the order to begin. Del Simon shouts his own name as encouragement, while the instructor warns that the moment they give up, they will be expelled. Lee Han begins to run across the training field. 2 recruits collapse exhausted onto the ground, with one saying he can't take it anymore.
The instructor calls them useless and shouts for them to go home.
He then points at the 2 and declares them eliminated, while Lee Han keeps running. While he runs, he seems more concerned about his psychic abilities. He observes Del Simon and wonders if he will also be able to do what he did. Lee Han then questions whether he also possesses psychic abilities. Another recruit starts to stumble during the run. He continues running, even exhausted, but ends up falling to the ground. The instructor approaches and calls him a weak brat, telling him to go home if he wants to sleep. The boy responds that he cannot go, and stares at the instructor with determination. John Red observes him in silence. Lee Han appears to help the boy get up and and tells the instructor that he hasn't given up yet, and then turns to his teammate and asks if that's right. The boy nods. John Red stares at them from the side. Lee Han then helps him continue the run under the instructor's gaze. With a whistle, he finally shouts for everyone to stop. Lee Han collapses to the ground completely exhausted. The instructor then notes that 40 out of 73 recruits remain. He warns that they are done for today, but the same run will happen every morning. The boys react to the news, and the next day, training begins again. The routine at ARC starts with the run at 5 in the morning. Breakfast is served for everyone at 8 o'clock. During class, John Red instructs the recruits to imagine an energy point somewhere in their bodies. Lee Han places his hand on his chest and decides he will go with his heart. At lunch, a large breaded cutlet is placed on one of the trays. He then walks with his meal through the cafeteria. He then sees the boy he helped, Kuro, and Lee Han sits with him. He thinks of Kuro as his first friend in life and at ARC. Lee Han then wishes Kuro a good lunch, and Del Simon walks past them with his tray. Simon suddenly stops and turns in his direction. The two exchange a challenging glare in the middle of the cafeteria. Kuro comments that Simon received education for gifted children, and Lee Han says that's why he is so snobbish. Lee Han admits that there is nothing he cannot do, and that they also need to use telekinesis in 3 weeks. Then his new friend reveals that he already knows how to use the ability. Lee Han calls him amazing, but realizes that he should not worry about others. The day's routine continues with classes, combat training, and a night run. After dinner and a shower, the dorm lights go out at 10 o'clock. Lying in his bed, he cannot sleep and compares the good conditions of the place with the life he had before. He then suppresses the desire to want to go home and reinforces to himself that he cannot be weak. 2 weeks pass and a boy celebrates for managing to levitate a pencil. Many recruits can already use telekinesis, but Lee Han keeps trying without success. He then despairs and questions if he has no talent for it. Kuro says he does not know any method to help him. Then Lee Han realizes there is only one person he can ask for help and goes to Del Simon. Simon sees him approaching and asks what the problem is. Lee Han stops in front of him. Simon deduces that he wants to know the secret to using the ability. He then mocks him, saying that he heard people in his country are educated, but that Lee Han is being arrogant. Lee Han kneels in front of him and asks him to teach him. Simon observes him for a moment before making a decision. He agrees to teach, but warns him not to complain about his methods and asks for a pencil. Then Simon strikes him in the chest with the pencil. Lee Han stares at him, not understanding what the hell just happened. John Red is at the window of his office. He comments that he can't believe it's already designation day, and reflects on how time flies while someone opens the door. A man enters the room and calls for Sergeant Red. John Red greets him, calling him Octo. The newcomer complains about the smell of cigarettes and asks what he is doing there. Octo sits down and asks about the new recruits. Red responds that they are all useless, but he corrects himself and says that maybe 1 or 2 are worth it. He then mentions that Del Simon isn't that bad and is already beyond a first-year level. Octo recognizes him as the last gifted child from the British Training Center and says he is looking forward to seeing him. Then the instructor begins talking about the other boy. He states that the other boy is loyal and has the best spirit out of all the recruits. He would be the perfect soldier. But ARC seeks superhumans, and if Han Lee cannot use psychic abilities, he will not be able to stay. Octo asks curiously what the boy's name is. He then questions the sergeant about what the boys call him, and Red assumes it must be something like son of a bitch. John Red prepares outside for the announcement. Already in front of the recruits, he announces that they will all join the ranks as first-year students, but only those prepared to become psychers will be admitted. He explains that the most basic psychic ability is external manifestation. The manifestation will be visible through the shine in the eyes, and everyone must be able to do that to remain. Those who succeed must go to the technician's side, and those who do not will be taken home by the agents waiting for them. Lee Han faces the challenge with determination. He then spots Major Kang among the agents. The recruits begin to move to form the lines. Lee Han remains still while the others pass him. Kuro looks back worried about his friend. With his hand on his chest, he focuses for the test. The memory of Simon hitting him in the chest with a pencil comes to his mind. With his hand over the wound, he questions if that was really the method, and asks if the boy wasn't trying to kill him. Simon explains that he didn't stab him that deep, and that the pain would help him focus. He then reveals that the wound is now his psychic path, and instructs him to gather his energy through that point, as it is not something achieved through concentration alone. Lee Han realizes that the boy already knew his energy core was his heart. Since that day, the psychic energy he faintly felt began to become clearer and clearer, but he still does not know how to release it. Instructor John Red calls his name, and warns him that he is the last one, telling him to hurry. While Kuro watches, Lee Han focuses determined not to go back home. The instructor stares at him with his eye shining. All the other recruits step back at the same time. Then he releases an immense wave of power. The instructor states that a soldier obeys his commander's orders no matter what, and prepares to attack him because there are no exceptions. Lee Han panics, trying to think of a way to react. His eyes then fix on the pen in the instructor's pocket. He dodges the strike and slides across the ground. Already standing, he reveals the pen he grabbed and says he doesn't know any other way. John Red questions him in surprise about when he took it. The boy stares at the instructor as he concludes that his psychic path is too narrow. Then he decides that he just needs to make it bigger and stabs himself in the chest with the pen. Del, Simon, and Kuro watch the scene completely shocked. The instructor grabs him by the collar and asks if he truly wishes to die. The pen and the pencil fall to the ground beside a pool of blood. With shining eyes, Lee Han stares at John Red. The instructor releases Lee Han and throws him to the ground, stating that he has never seen a boy with so little talent. Sitting on the ground and wounded, Lee Han hears the instructor congratulating him. Lee Han finally feels that he has reached the starting line. He turns to Kuro and reassures him, saying it was just a scratch. Then Octo approaches and extends his hand to deliver a symbol of his acceptance. Lee Han looks at the device on his wrist as Octo explains that it is a high-tech communication bracelet. The device confirms Lee Han's registration as a new recruit. Impressed by the technology, the boy listens as Octo begins listing the other functions. But John Red interrupts, calling everyone's attention to gather in their designated classes. He informs them that at ARC, everyone is divided into 4 classes from A to D based on their abilities. The designation will depend on their performance over the last 3 weeks, with a chance to rise in class in the future. John Red congratulates the 25 remaining recruits and assumes they all consider him a bastard. Octo reacts discreetly to his statement. Then John Red corrects himself, stating that he is the worst of them all. He announces that Class A will have only 1 person, revealing Del Simon. Next, he points out that Class B consists of 4 boys, including Kuro. John Red then orders the 5 to come with him as he checks a device. John Red finishes the call, assigning 5 to Class C and the remaining 15 to Class D. He then orders the 20 remaining recruits to follow Instructor Wei Chen. Before them appears Instructor Wei Chen, a man with an imposing presence. The man's appearance makes the boys step back, considering him scarier than Sergeant Red. But Wei Chen introduces himself in a friendly manner as the weapons instructor, promising they will stay together until the end. His unexpected attitude leaves all the boys surprised. Meanwhile, Del Simon and Kuro begin to walk away with their group. But Del Simon stops for a moment and looks back. He passes quickly by Lee Han, who belongs to the other group. Lee Han watches the other boy walk away. Kuro cannot hold back his tears for having to separate. Lee Han reassures him, asking him not to worry. He turns, promising that he will catch up soon, and Kuro agrees. Wei Chen then calls his group to go to the gym. The group approaches a large gymnasium. Inside the gym, the instructor lifts a huge training spear. With a display of strength, Wei Chen spins the spear at high speed. He then stops the heavy object inches away from Lee Han, who raises his hand by reflex. Wei Chen continues spinning the weapon around him with agility. The fast movement brushes past Lee Han's face. After the demonstration, the instructor explains that the use of swords or spears is tied to the psychic equipment they will use. He reveals that dragon skin and bones are the only materials capable of storing and transmitting psychic energy. Thus, weapons made from dragon parts become lethal against the creatures themselves. Lee Han then asks how they fought dragons before these weapons existed. Wei Chen explains that at first it was all hand-to-hand combat, and hundreds of psychics died to kill a single dragon. Although some could attack from a distance, to kill a dragon, it was necessary to strike up close. One had to pierce the weapon into a vital point to release the psychic energy. Psychics with that ability are called strikers. Lee Han and his classmates are amazed by the revelation. Seeing their reaction, Wei Chen says that today they will find the weapon that suits each of them best. Lee Han then takes a training staff and prepares himself. Wei Chen asks Lee Han if he likes the spear, and the boy confirms that he does. Lee Han explains that he liked the breeze and the sound the weapon made during the demonstration. The instructor reflects that the boy's decisive action against Sergeant Red was not a common feat, suggesting he had a hard life. Setting pity aside, Wei Chen acknowledges that the boy has talent. He tells Lee Han that he is looking forward to working with him, and the boy agrees. The instructor then promises that he will do his best to help him. Lee Han grips the training staff more firmly. He and another boy named Jose train together in the gym. The 2 boys are panting from the intense exercise. Lee Han comments that Jose looks tired and says he can quit if he wants to, but Jose accuses him of being the one trying to stall for a break. He advances and asks if he is wrong. Lee Han blocks the attack with his staff, and the 2 face each other. Jose's staff breaks from the impact of the strike. Lee Han takes the opportunity and knocks the opponent to the ground. 2 weeks later, Lee Han finally manages to corner his opponent during training. With the victory, he defeats the class leader, Jose, who surrenders. Jose congratulates him, saying that he has learned a lot and that since he will rise to Class C, the leader position will be vacant. Then Jose pauses before continuing his speech. He suggests that Lee Han should be the next leader, but the boy responds that the decision is not his to make. But Jose assures him that everyone agrees with the decision, as they have already discussed it. Lee Han thanks Jose and all his classmates for their support. Later, he wonders if being class leader will help him rise to Class C, but John Red suddenly appears in front of him. The sergeant simply denies that possibility. In the academy, a recruit comments that Sergeant Red has a strong temper and has already assaulted him several times. He walks away, thinking the situation is terrible, while another recruit asks who the opponent will be. The news that the opponent is a rookie spreads among the other students. On the other side of the courtyard, Lee Han wields a spear while John Red prepares for the confrontation. He uses the power in his hand to light a cigar. From the windows, some students cheer for the rookie, telling him to hit the sergeant hard. John Red hears the comments and calls the students little bastards. Lee Han maintains a combat stance, gripping the spear firmly. Then the sergeant questions Class D if they really trust someone who doesn't even know how to use telekinesis to be their leader. All the boys in the class remain silent behind Lee Han. John Red calls them fools, but acknowledges that there must be a reason for their confidence before calling for Lee Han. The boy reacts to the sudden call. With a stomp, the sergeant breaks the spear tip and throws the shaft toward the boy. Lee Han manages to catch the shaft that was thrown at him. The sergeant challenges him to prove his worth by fighting him, but Lee Han points out that the improvised weapon is too sharp. John Red asks if he is worried about hurting him, but Lee Han denies it. He then removes the top part of his uniform, preparing for combat. Lee Han asks if the sergeant isn't going to use any weapon, but John Red replies that he wouldn't fight without giving him some sort of advantage. He establishes that the rule is simple. The boy will win if any part of his body touches the ground, and he will lose only by surrendering. Then Lee Han confidently states that he will not lose today. He begins spinning the shaft, preparing for the attack. John Red takes a combat stance, ready for the fight. From a window, other recruits comment that the boy has good posture, but doubt he can beat a sergeant. Del Simon pushes the others aside to get a better view of the fight. He watches the scene closely, referring to Lee Han as a brat. With a shout, Lee Han charges to attack his opponent, but John Red dodges the strikes with fast and precise movements. The sergeant dodges another attack that grazes past his face. Lee Han then leaps into the air to deliver a top-down strike. Lee Han tries to hit John Red with a descending blow using the shaft, but the sergeant grabs Lee Han's shirt before the strike hits him. He then throws the boy over his shoulder with force. Lee Han hits the ground and John Red stands over him. The sergeant stomps hard on the ground right beside the boy's head. Using the shaft as support, Lee Han manages to slide away from the stomp. The boy gets up, panting after escaping the attack. John Red states that he kills both dragons and their minions. He continues, saying that he won't go easy just because the boy is weak, while monsters attack a group of people. The sergeant explains that the fear he feels now is nothing compared to what he will feel when facing those things. Then he asks Lee Han if he usually fights with his mouth. John Red advances, saying it seems the boy can last a bit longer. He grabs Lee Han's shirt again with one hand. With a single move, the sergeant lifts him into the air and then throws him far away with great force. Lee Han is thrown and hits the dirt ground hard. He sits up in pain, but still refuses to let go of the shaft. Suddenly, John Red notices a cut on his face and wonders when he was hit. Lee Han's classmates shout encouragement, telling him to show what he is capable of. With a shout, the boy stands and charges forward to attack again. The sergeant decides to see how far the boy can go and what he is capable of doing. Lee Han begins spinning around John Red, swinging the shaft in wide arcs. The sergeant dodges the spinning blow that passes by him. The boy continues his attack with another powerful spin, and John Red leans backward, barely escaping the shaft. He understands that the boy is using centrifugal force to attack, and realizes why Wei likes him so much. Then John Red says that he also likes Lee Han. He takes a firm step forward, preparing himself. The sergeant announces that he will face his final strike, and Lee Han leaps into the air in one last spinning attack. But the shaft shatters upon hitting John Red's arm, who blocks the strike. John Red pulls a piece of the broken shaft out of his own chest. Then the sergeant grabs Lee Han's neck with his hand. He lifts him into the air with a single hand. John Red then demands that Lee Han surrender. With his hand, he begins using his power directly on the boy's throat. Watching the scene, Del Simon says that this is too much. He shouts for the boy to surrender or else he will die. But Lee Han refuses to give up and says only over his dead body. Wei Chen pushes through the crowd of recruits. He shouts Sergeant Red's name in disapproval. Wei Chen runs toward him, asking if if he is trying to kill him, and Lee Han's body goes limp. John Red releases him, lamenting that he did not surrender, but that he also did not lose. Wei Chen holds the unconscious boy in his arms and wonders what he should do. He then tells John Red that he is fed up with his methods and Ark's methods. An alarm sounds throughout the area, and John Red puts his jacket back on. John Red shouts for everyone to shut up. He then turns to the crowd and declares that since Lee Han did not technically surrender, they can just say that he won. As he walks away, he warns Wei Chen that nothing is achieved by pampering the boy. Del Simon watches the scene and states that the boy has overcome his hardships on his own and proved his worth. But John Red instructs him to send Lee Han to Class B as soon as he is treated. Outside, the ARC facility shines under the morning sun. In one of the building's hallways, a door opens. A medical officer reacts with surprise upon hearing about the transfer to Class B. She walks beside John Red and questions whether the superiors will approve promoting a Class D recruit directly to B. He explains that the boy has potential for Class A, but his latent psychic abilities keep him stuck in the command's evaluation. But John Red states that they are completely mistaken. He begins explaining that what is necessary to hunt dragons is not psychic abilities. The most important thing is the ability to pierce the beast's hearts under unimaginable fear and pressure. John Red believes that, in that perspective, Lee Han has the potential to become the best striker Ark has ever seen, and cannot be wasted. The officer comments that she has never seen him praise someone so much, and he adds that perhaps that boy could save the world. He then corrects her, saying that it is the opposite of hate, and she calls him a sadist. A week passes with the boy hospitalized. The medical officer finds instructor Wei Chen in the hallway and asks if he isn't going to see the boy. Wei Chen is startled at being caught off guard while carrying a basket. She asks what he brought this time, and he replies that it's just some snacks. The medical officer asks Wei Chen what he is doing standing outside. He responds that it doesn't seem like a good time for visits, while the two look through the window in the door. Inside the room, Lee Han focuses on trying to move a small sphere on the table. An energy manifests around him as he struggles to use his ability. Wei Chen and the medical officer watch the scene with anticipation. The sphere levitates for a moment and emits a flash. Then the two celebrate the boy's success with a high five. She encourages him to go inside the room, while he comments on the boy's concentration. Wei Chen enters and Lee Han lets the sphere drop onto the table with a sigh of relief. The instructor greets him and asks how he is feeling. Lee Han answers that he feels great and thanks him for asking. He thanks him again when Wei Chen places a basket of snacks on the table for him. The instructor then informs him that tomorrow he will join Class B and praises him for practicing his telekinesis. The boy explains that he felt he needed to learn some telekinesis before leaving, since his psychic scores are still low. While peeling an apple, Wei Chen agrees that it was a wise move, because a psyker needs telekinesis no matter how good he is with weapons. He explains that since most psychic battles happen in the air, one must be able to retrieve the weapon if they lose it. Then the instructor suddenly gets an idea. He asks a staff member for permission to take the boy for a moment despite the late hour. At night, they arrive at the facility's gym. Lee Han follows the instructor inside and asks why they are at the gym. Wei Chen explains that judging by the speed of his psychic growth, the chances of his specialty manifesting are low. He says it's better for the boy not to dream about ignition or other special abilities, and also advises him not to expect teleportation like the others. The instructor then asks how he intends to fight. The answer is simple, and he must train his telekinesis until it reaches its maximum potential. Thus, telekinesis itself will become his specialty. Lee Han is surprised to hear the term advanced psychokinesis. Wei Chen walks across floating bars, explaining that psychic abilities are like muscles that grow stronger with use. He states that the lowest psychic ability score is nothing more than an illusion, and that the boy's generation has much more potential. The instructor then encourages him to persevere and train. With a yes sir, Lee Han accepts his instructor's challenge. He then steps forward. The next day, he stops in front of the Class B door. The boy takes a deep breath before entering the room. When he opens the door, he accidentally bumps into another student. The older student turns around surprised at the bump. He then recognizes him and says the name Han Lee. The boy laughs and says that there is no one in the class who doesn't know his name. He introduces himself as the leader of Class B, Dmitry Vladimirovich Petrov, and extends his hand for a handshake. Lee Han asks if he needs to say his full name every time. Dmitry asks him to call him only by his first name and welcomes Han with a handshake. He then calls him to follow, explaining that they arrived just in time for weapons training.
They enter the training gym.
Dmitry guides him through the place. Lee Han prepares himself for weapons training. Lee Han grips a training staff tightly. He prepares for weapons training. his favorite activity. He charges forward with the staff in hand, passing by Dmitri. Dmitri watches him as Li-Han gets ready to attack. With the staff, he quickly defeats several of his classmates. Standing over the fallen boys, a voice asks if that is fun for him. Li-Han turns and sees Kuro curled up on the floor. He asks if it is fun attacking Kuro's weakness, whose specialty is his psychic ability, and adds that they should be glad there is no psychic combat training. Dmitri watches the scene from afar. He then clenches his fist with a smile on his face. Fallen on the ground, Kuro stares at the wooden sword in front of him. Someone approaches and stops in front of him. Dmitri stares at him and asks why he isn't fighting back, but Del Simon touches his shoulder and says that now it's his turn. Another boy joins them, stating that he will be third in line. Far away, Li-Han abruptly stops in the middle of his path. The gym door is smashed open and the boys turn to see what is happening. Li-Han charges forward and strikes one of the attackers with the wooden sword. Then he rips the weapon from the other boy's hand. The two attackers are thrown far away. Kuro remains on the ground, looking up with tears in his eyes. In front of him, Li-Han holds the wooden sword ready for combat. Kuro calls his name in a low voice. Li-Han turns to Dmitri and asks if that is what he calls open training. Kuro continues calling him, reaching his hand toward him. Dmitri places a hand on his head and explains that this is the arc way because enemies won't go easy. He points at Li-Han and says that the strange one there is him for helping Kuro like that, then concludes that this attitude is only cornering him even more. Li-Han clenches his fist beside Kuro, but Dmitri admits that 3 against 1 was also a bit pathetic. The 3 attacking boys are sitting on the ground, just watching the scene. With a smile, he invites Li-Han to show them what real training looks like. Li-Han stares at him and asks if he's being challenged. Dmitri advances, striking downward with the wooden sword, but the attack is blocked by Li-Han's weapon. Dmitri attacks again, this time with a horizontal strike. Li-Han dodges the second attack by stepping backward. He lets the opponent spin from his own momentum and lose balance. Dmitri stumbles forward. Li-Han prepares for the counterattack. Li-Han spins and strikes Dmitri with a low blow. Dmitri plants his foot on the ground to push his body upward. Then Li-Han attacks, and Dmitri narrowly dodges and headbutts Li-Han, throwing him to the ground. Li-Han kneels and complains about a headbutt during weapons training. Dmitri stands up and reveals that he has trained Sambo since he learned to walk, stating that the other has no chance if he grabs him. Leaning on the wooden weapon, Li-Han asks if he intends to hunt dragons using Sambo. Dmitri replies that if needed, he could choke out a dragon or two. The other boys begin shouting and cheering for him. He turns and tells them to stop calling him a baby, because it doesn't match his image. Li-Han simply watches the interaction between them. Dmitri turns back to the fight and asks them to let him concentrate. Li-Han positions himself in front of Kuro, facing the united group. Li-Han briefly turns toward Kuro. Dmitri shouts for him to keep his eyes on the fight and rushes to attack. He blocks the strike and pushes the opponent's weapon aside. Then Li-Han slides across the floor and closes in. Dmitri leaps toward him with a sweeping attack, but Li-Han jumps over the strike to dodge it. Dmitri looks up while the opponent is in the air. Li-Han uses the momentum of the jump to deliver a vertical strike. The attack hits Dmitri's wooden weapon squarely. The other boys watch the scene in awe. Dmitri's weapon splits into several pieces. Li-Han lands on the floor with the tip of his own weapon broken. Unarmed, Dmitri runs toward Li-Han. He throws himself onto the opponent, knocking him to the ground. Li-Han is pinned under Dmitri's weight. Dmitri pins him to the ground and demands his surrender. He twists Li-Han's arm and threatens him while the other boys cheer, but Li-Han challenges him to go ahead and try. Dmitri asks whether he really has the guts for it. Li-Han's arm is broken, and the spectators react in shock. Li-Han falls to the ground, silently contorting in pain. Dmitri stands up, observing the result of his action. He stands over the fallen boy and says that he warned him to surrender. Kuro watches the scene with tears in his eyes. Dmitri turns and acknowledges the opponent's endurance for not screaming. Then he orders one of the boys to take Kuro to the infirmary, but Li-Han stands up and says that all his opponents so far must have been just a bunch of crybabies. He shouts for Dmitri to get up and finish the fight. Li-Han stands with the broken piece of weapon in his hand, while Dmitri is lying on the ground. Dmitri is unconscious and lying against the floor. Dmitri wakes up in the infirmary. He jumps to his feet and asks where he is. Beside him, Li-Han is watching a video message on his watch. On the screen, Major Kang says he is impressed with him, and that the other children are fine thanks to him. The Major promises to send a video of them next time, and Li-Han smiles. The message ends with a photo of Major Kang with the children and a "see you soon." With tears in his eyes, Li-Han comments that they look well and even gained weight. He turns to Dmitri and asks him to swipe to the next picture. Dmitri agrees, still a bit confused. Then he questions why he should help him, and Li-Han responds that it's because he broke his arm. Dmitri retorts that he punched a hole in the back of his neck, but Li-Han blames him for letting his guard down, reminding him that that's the arc way. Dmitri is left speechless and just grumbles. Li-Han admits that he was angry that day, but he states he holds nothing against Dmitri. Dmitri agrees and says that next time they will see who the real winner is. Li-Han regrets having hurt Kuro's feelings that day. He reflects that he should have just helped him. not fought in his place. Dmitri says he understands how he feels, but warns that Kuro could die when becoming a second-year student. Lee-han doesn't understand and asks why. The two leave the room and walk down the hallway. Lee-han asks where they are going, and Dmitri answers that it's easier to show than explain. They arrive at the emergency room, and Dmitri explains that it's where they take everyone who is still breathing. At that moment, a stretcher with an injured man is rushed inside. Lee-han is startled and steps back from the passing stretcher. He asks, shocked, what that was. Dmitri asks if he now understands the intensity of their training. Lee-han, however, points and asks if the older cadets aren't their age. He comments that the person on the stretcher looked like an adult, like the instructors. Dmitri turns around and touches the back of his neck in silence. Then he reveals that when they become second-year students, they begin receiving injections. Lee-han reacts with shock upon learning that the injections accelerate the body's maturation. Dmitri smiles and reminds him that they need to fight dragons in only 3 years. With his arms crossed, Lee-han absorbs the information that Ark will not wait for them to grow up. Then he surprises Dmitri by saying that this is not bad at all. On a winter night, a younger Lee-han states that he always wanted to become an adult as fast as possible. He needed to do whatever it took to survive. In one of his escapes, he runs with a bag while a man falls in the background. He was always competing with adults and being captured by them. A man strikes him in the face with a punch. Fallen on the ground, he is beaten again. The attacker walks away, leaving him behind. Back in the present, Lee-han states that he doesn't need a happy childhood, only to survive. Dmitri comments that he might have the most determined attitude in all of Ark. Lee-han turns his back and says that he understands what he means, suggesting they go back. Outside, Wei-chen announces that the day's training will be parachuting. Wei-chen explains that they only need to do what they already practiced, and must finish final checks by 4:30 p.m. Dmitri adjusts his equipment and asks if Lee-han isn't already missing the hospital bed. Lee-han just smiles in front of his parachute gear. When checking his backpack, he notices it is filled with food. He suspects that this is not a simple parachuting exercise. Dmitri sighs when he sees that some cadets, like Jose, are already eating what they found. Suddenly, something catches his attention. He taps Lee-han's shoulder and points into the distance. The person he points at is Del Simon. Dmitri approaches Lee-han and asks if that isn't the gifted boy from England, saying he would love to fight him. Del Simon notices the stare and turns in their direction. He questions what is wrong with that boy. Sitting next to Lee-han, Kuro keeps his head down. Lee-han observes the situation with a serious expression. Wei-chen shouts for everyone to hurry and board the helicopters. The cadets run in line with their helmets and parachute backpacks. Everyone boards a large military helicopter. Once on board, Wei-chen watches the boys seated, ready for takeoff. The fleet of helicopters flies over the area, and Wei-chen announces that they are departing as well. On the ground, John Red and 2 other instructors watch the aircraft moving away. John Red comments that, finally, the cleanup of those bastards has come to an end. Kuro narrates that he does not remember when it all began, but he saw certain images before Lee-han appeared, and every time he saw them, the boy really came to the rescue. Lee-han always arrived running to save him, but now, no matter how long he waits, Kuro can no longer see him. He assumes that this time his friend will not come. 1 hour earlier, the helicopters were flying over the ocean. On board, the cadets look out the window and Lee-han wonders where they are going. A message on the watches informs them that they are flying over a deserted island. The order is for them to descend immediately and begin survival training. From a submarine, John Red explains that there is food for 2 days in the backpacks and that the rest is up to them. The cadets panic at the news of survival training on a deserted island. Del Simon, however, comments that it looks fun, like camping. John Red looks at his watch and announces the return of the instructors. The message ends informing that they will only return in a week, and that the cadets must survive until then. John Red pulls a cadet out of the water onto the submarine. He turns to another instructor and asks if that was the last one. The instructor looks at the map on his watch and confirms that there are no more lost cadets. John Red questions Wei-chen about landing points, and he responds that 7 cadets have already formed a group. He warns not to see them as innocent children, because they are the same as adults. Without supervision, they prioritize strength and try to steal rations from each other instead of surviving together. The leader of the victorious group thanks the fallen boy for the food. When they open the backpack, they discover that he hadn't eaten anything yet and begin taking the supplies. One of the members shouts for them to leave some for the leader and calls for Carl. Carl approaches and calls them fools. He scolds them for not following the plan to gather as much food as possible before sunset. With his uniform open, Carl asks if they think he gathered them just to share. Then he declares that they need to unite and take everyone's food if they want to dominate the island. One of his followers agrees with a shout of support. The group gets fired up, ready to take on Dmitri, Lee-han, and even Del Simon. With his back turned, Carl stops when he hears a cry for help coming from somewhere. He quickly turns toward the sound. Then he looks up at the trees and asks his group if they heard that. With a smile, he points upward and announces that that is their next target. Far away, Lee-han comes out of the water and walks along the beach. He steps on the sand and laments having wasted too much time. As he walks, he complains about having landed in the ocean. He looks around and concludes that the place is too conspicuous. Then he follows the shoreline in search of a place to camp. Lee-han enters the forest, pushing through the bushes. He runs through the woods, aware that the rations will not be enough for the others. Stopping for a moment, he reflects that if cornered, the others may resort to stealing. In another part of the forest, Del Simon walks alone. He stops and turns to Dimitri, asking why he is being followed. Dimitri stares at him and challenges him to a fight. Del Simon turns away and says he does not want to waste his energy on him. Dimitri reaches out and asks him to wait, saying he did not mean it in a bad way. He explains that he just wanted to fight him once, nothing more. Then Dimitri suggests that they could get to know each other first, since they have plenty of time. Del Simon keeps walking while Dimitri follows him. The sun begins to set on the island. Someone walks through the tall grass, stating that it must be around there. Carl stops and looks up with a smile. The group finds Kuro hanging from a tree, who pleads for help while they mock him. One of the boys takes Kuro's backpack. Carl grabs the backpack and thanks him. While the group walks away, Kuro begs them to help him down, saying they can keep his backpack. Carl turns and tells him to be grateful for being up there, because that way they didn't need to beat him up before taking his things. He adds that Kuro should wait for the instructors to rescue him, because he probably won't starve to death. Alone in the tree, Kuro cries while one of the boys shouts that he also won't die of thirst because it's going to rain. Kuro remains hanging in the tree, crying alone in the darkness of the night. He remembers Del Simon telling him to stop crying because it irritated him. He also recalls Carl yelling for him to shut up, and another boy telling him to stop crying like a baby. Then he wonders why he can't even cry when he wants to. Suddenly, he stops crying and notices something. He stops crying and listens carefully. Then he whispers Lee-han's name. A small shape appears floating in front of him. Kuro blinks, not believing what he sees. The sound comes from the bushes moving just below. Lee-han emerges from the vegetation and stops beneath the tree. He looks up and asks what that is. The next morning, Lee-han is sitting outside a makeshift shelter. Kuro comes out from inside the tent looking frightened. Lee-han turns to him and says that he is already awake. Kuro calls his name from the shelter entrance. A tray with cookies and chocolate is on the ground, and Lee-han announces that breakfast is served. Already inside the tent, he explains that he did not find Kuro's backpack, so they will have to share his. Kuro holds the tray but hesitates to eat, not wanting to be a burden to his friend. With tears in his eyes, he thanks him and starts eating hurriedly. Kuro continues eating while Lee-han watches silently. Lee-han suggests they look for water after eating, while small drones fly over the camp. Surveillance drones follow the cadet groups through the forest. In a dark room, John Red watches everything on multiple screens. Octo appears in the doorway and scolds him for smoking inside, but is told to shut up. He enters and asks what John is doing in the dark and if any cadet has caught his attention. John points at one of the screens and tells Octo to come look at a completely ridiculous kid. Knut Meyer from Norway finds it absurd to spend a week on the island, but concludes he only needs to survive. He then builds a raft to try to return to Ark. Lee-han drinks some water from his bottle. He offers the bottle to Kuro and says the water is drinkable, suggesting they fill it before leaving. As they walk back to the camp, Lee-han comments on the intense heat of the day. He tells Kuro they will need more food to survive the rest of the week. Lee-han wonders what they can eat on the island, but Kuro suddenly stops behind him. Kuro grabs him by the shoulder and shouts for him to stop. He is pulled back at the exact moment his foot almost steps on a branch. The two look down into a trap, and Lee-han comments that they would have been stuck there for days. Lee-han kneels and asks Kuro how he knew the trap was there. Then he asks him if he managed to see the trap. Kuro confirms that he did, with a nervous expression. He tries to describe what he saw, and Lee-han realizes he literally predicted what would happen. Lee-han concludes that Kuro possesses short-term premonition, a rare and notable trait. Lee-han and Kuro walk together along the forest trail. He turns to Kuro, seeing an opportunity in this survival training. The silhouettes of two boys approach the makeshift shelter. Carl lifts the shelter tarp and looks inside. He finds only empty ration packages. One of the boys suggests destroying the shelter, but Carl states they must have gone to get water. With a smile, he decides they will come back later to get them while they sleep. Kuro returns exhausted to the camp, announcing that they finally arrived. Lee-han agrees and invites him to go inside and rest a little, but as he approaches, he suddenly stops and tells Kuro to wait. He kneels when he finds a small stone on the ground and states that someone was there. The stone he had placed at the shelter entrance is now outside. Then he points to the various footprints around the area. Lee-han decides to break down the shelter and move, because the group will probably return to rob them. The two boys set out to find a new place to camp as the sun sets. Lee-han says they need to find a suitable place before it gets dark. He asks if Kuro can see anything, but the boy says he can barely keep his eyes open. Kuro suddenly stops in the middle of the path, and Lee-han calls his name. Kuro's heart races as he has a vision. He sees a large creature resembling a panther. Then he sees Lee Han in a combat stance with his spear. The creature charges toward him. Kuro then throws himself toward Lee Han. He pushes his friend out of the way. A black panther leaps past them, striking Kuro in the process. Lee Han falls to the ground from the force of the shove. The animal stops in front of him, while Kuro lies farther behind. Lee Han notices that his spear is far out of reach. The panther opens its mouth, ready to attack. Lee Han closes his eyes, preparing for the impact. A projectile suddenly cuts through the darkness. The attack hits the panther directly, throwing it to the side. The animal then retreats and leaps into the forest. Jose appears and asks Lee Han if he is all right. Lee Han stares at him and whispers his name. Jose finds Han, Lee, and Kuro in the middle of the vegetation. He then places his hand over his bandaged leg. Lee Han points at his injury, but Jose just looks. He explains that some guys set up a trap and that he can barely stand. Then Jose falls to the ground, saying he is happy to have found them. Lee Han comments that they also saw a trap earlier, and Kuro believes it may be the work of the same people. Jose assumes there must be a group looting, but states he has nothing for them to take. Then he says that as soon as he got hurt, he ate everything he had before someone could take it. Lee Han watches him silently. He then suggests they first find a place to rest. Far away, Carl is sitting alone in front of a campfire during the night. He looks up at the stars. In a memory, he turns to the side and questions him. A man reveals to Carl that the airport detectors reacted when he arrived, suggesting he has psychic abilities. He then offers Carl the chance to enlist in ARC, but the boy questions him about the movie he is filming. The man grabs Carl and states that if he becomes a psyker, he will have fame and fortune far greater than as an actor. He then says that when the war ends, the psykers will become the military power of the nation and Carl will dominate everyone. Carl turns and walks toward a building. He then says, "Damn." In another part of the forest, Dimitri does push-ups while Del Simon watches from afar. Del Simon then asks if he isn't tired, but the boy is just sitting under the shade of a tree, eating. He comments that they also don't have much food left. Dimitri stands up, cracks his shoulder, and asks how he will survive the next 5 days. He then slaps his own arm, stating that it is pure muscle. Dimitri explains that if he wants to be a good attacker, he needs to keep training. But Del calls him a fool, saying psykers fight with their psychic abilities. He just stares at him and asks, "Oh, really?" Dimitri then laments missing Han Lee, the only one good enough to train with him. Del turns to him and asks if he has ever fought Han Lee. With a smile, Dimitri realizes he took the bait. The next morning, they find a shelter in a cave in the forest. Lee Han then wishes everyone a good morning. He suggests that the three of them stay together for the rest of the week. Lee Han warns that he and Kuro will go out to gather firewood and food. Then he asks Jose to protect the place, since his leg is still injured, and the boy agrees and apologizes. But Lee Han reassures him, saying that thanks to his ignition ability, they have the advantage in this survival training. He begins explaining that having fire means that they can get food that way. Kuro then asks if he knows how to fish since they have no rods, but Lee Han just calls him. He thanks Kuro. Then Lee Han explains that it is because he saved him when he was in danger and for finding the cave. He says that helping was the best he could do for now, but he realized that he couldn't defend him forever, so he no longer knew what to do. Lee Han states that yesterday he finally got his answer and declares that Kuro is a psychic genius. He concludes by saying that Kuro has the strength to defend himself and protect him too, and that from now on they can count on each other to survive. Lee Han reminds him that after all, they are friends. Kuro then remembers when he was just a lonely child in an orphanage in Japan. Without a name, he was called Kuro because of his skin. He was constantly insulted by the others, but now he had a friend who believed in him. Lee Han says that his ability is much more powerful than he thought, and asks what they will do now. The two then look at the fish in the water. Kuro uses his ability to see one of the fish. He is able to know where the fish will move. Lee Han explains that if he uses his premonition with telekinesis, they will be able to fish without any tools. At Lee Han's request, Kuro then activates his ability. He lifts a fish out of the water, and Lee Han celebrates his friend's achievement. They manage to catch enough fish for a meal. On the third day of training, the two return with full baskets, and Lee Han praises Kuro for having caught 8 fish. Kuro says that Jose will love it, and Lee Han adds that he is getting very good at cleaning the fish. As they approach the cave, the two hear a noise coming from inside. Lee Han reacts to the sound. He then shouts for Kuro to wait and runs down a slope. The boy runs toward the cave entrance. From inside, he shouts, asking what happened. Lee Han finds Jose lying unconscious on the ground. Dimitri throws a wooden sword to Del Simon and tells him to catch it. Del questions why he brought 2 weapons for what was supposed to be a simple parachuting exercise. Dimitri explains that he has been thinking about using dual swords to look cooler, and asks why he agreed to fight. Del then deduces that if he managed to fight evenly with Han Lee, he must be Dmitry Vladimirovich Petrov, the leader of Class B. He raises the sword, saying he heard that his transfer to Class A was already a done deal, and he wants to see if he deserves it. Dimitri states that he is starting to like him. Then the two charge at each other. Del blocks Dimitri's strike, who realizes that the abrupt stop will affect his rhythm. He then dodges his opponent's next strike. Del hits him with a counterattack. He then asks if Dimitri thought it was already over. Dimitri stares back at him. Del dodges another one of Dimitri's strikes. Dimitri then advances, saying it is even better if he retreats. Del blocks his multiple attacks. Del is struck by Dimitri's blows. Dimitri then attacks him with a sword strike. Del dodges and predicts his opponent's next move. Dimitri realizes he needs to protect his back. He stumbles, and Del prepares for the counterattack. Del then strikes Dimitri while he is off balance. He knocks him to the ground. Dimitri supports himself with the sword to get up. He then shouts that he got him. Dimitri attacks him from behind. His sword stops just before striking Del's neck. Del's eyes manifest. Dimitri is immobilized with a blade at his back. Del says he won the weapon fight, but that they are psychers. He then wonders if that means Han Li is stronger than Dimitri. Li Han holds Jose in his arms and shouts for him to wake up. He then stops for a moment, panting. Jose wakes up and tells Han that he is not dead, asking him to stop shouting. Now around the campfire, Li Han asks who did that to him. Jose reveals that it was Karl Heinz and his group of 7 people. He says they took all the food and will probably come back, so he suggests they move. But Li Han refuses. He tells Jose that he is not calm enough to let some guys who hurt his friend get away so easily. Jose just watches him. Li Han then decides that they must first find a new place to camp and let the other group keep the area for now. He declares that when the sun sets, they will attack them. Later, Li Han and Kuro hide in the vegetation. They watch Karl's group from afar in their old cave, and Li Han says he knew they would take it for themselves. He then tells Kuro that when he is ready, they will begin. Li Han states that it would be impossible to do this alone, but that together they can defeat those guys easily. Kuro focuses, remembering that Han is his only friend who ever believed in him. He then activates his ability, determined not to disappoint him. Then he launches several stones in the direction of the enemies. One of the stones hits one of the men in the chest. Another is hit in the legs and asks what that was. Karl hears the noise, shouts that they are under attack, and orders someone to check it out. One of the men falls to the ground while the others run to attack. One of them warns the others that they are throwing stones and to dodge as they advance. Kuro uses his ability to predict the path they will take. The stones hit the men, who complain about not being able to see in the dark. Li Han then jumps over 2 of them. He strikes the men with his staff, taking them down one by one. Karl stands among his fallen companions. Li Han faces him at the cave entrance, ready to fight. He then prepares for the final confrontation. Karl faces Han Li, surprised to recognize him. He doubts that Han Li defeated 6 men alone. Then Karl realizes he is not alone and asks who is with him. Kuro comes out from behind the bushes, but Li Han warns that he can take care of Karl alone. Karl gets irritated when he realizes that the 2 of them, including Kuro, defeated all his men. Li Han states that they are there to avenge Jose and that he won't go easy. He then bends down to pick up a staff from the ground, saying he has heard enough. Karl states that he will take the opportunity to teach him a lesson, but Li Han challenges him, saying he would love to see him try. Karl charges and attacks him with the staff. Li Han blocks the strike and hits him in the face. The boy recoils from the impact of the blow. He then attacks again, but Li Han dodges. Li Han strikes him in the chest with a blow from his staff. Karl bends over from the impact. Li Han immobilizes Karl with the staff and asks if it hurts. He then warns him to prepare himself because he is just getting started. Karl shouts for him to stop bragging and attacks. Li Han defends against his opponent's strikes. He then breaks Karl's staff and throws him to the ground. Karl cannot believe that Han Li is that strong. Li Han approaches, saying that Jose was already injured and that he did not need to hurt him so much. He stops in front of Karl, who tells him not to underestimate him. The boy then shouts for him not to dare underestimate him. He remembers when he was an acting prodigy in Germany and how his father used his popularity for his own career. His father encouraged him to become a psyker so they could dominate the country and crush anyone in their way. Back in the present, Karl stands up, saying that he has come too far to be defeated by someone like him, and throws dirt into his face. Karl then charges at Li Han. He hits him with a punch to the face. Kuro runs toward them and shouts Han's name. He rushes forward as Karl continues to punch Li Han. Karl turns to him and tells him not to approach. He then goes back to attacking Li Han. Kuro watches the scene. Karl stands over Li Han, who is lying on the ground. He then picks up Li Han's staff. Karl says he will make sure he never tries something like that again. A stone hits the staff he was holding. He faces Kuro. Kuro activates his ability and shouts for him to leave Han alone. Karl asks if he also wants to face him. He then grabs Kuro, saying that he never liked him and that he should not be an ARC. While he insults him, Li Han stands up. Li Han then punches Karl in the face. Li Han questions if he doesn't feel useless for thinking he could overpower everyone just because he had greater numbers. He then states that Del Simon, Dimitri, and Jose, and Kuro are all better than he is. Karl just stares at him. Li Han says that there are many obstacles for him to overcome on his path to the top. He then shouts that Karl is nothing. Li Han raises his staff to attack. The staff stops near Karl's neck. as Lee Han says that everyone has a reason to reach the top. He advises him to find another path if he wants to climb, and warns him not to hurt his friends again. Fallen, Carl remembers his father and how he never wanted to be a psyker. He then lies on the forest floor. Later, it was discovered that Karl Heinz left Ark voluntarily. The 3 remaining days on the island pass. The rescue helicopters finally arrive. Reunited, Jose and Kuro comment that they never want to go through that again. A group of cadets gathers around Han Li, Kuro, and Jose to thank them. Then one of the boys asks Kuro how he caught all those fish, while another asks Jose about hiding his ignition ability. But Jose points at Lee Han, saying that he is the one they should truly thank. A holographic message announces the end of survival training, congratulating everyone for the good work. Sitting next to Del Simon, Dimitri comments that he never thought he would be happy to hear Sergeant Red's voice. The message then instructs them to board the helicopters in the order their names are called. The rescue helicopters fly over the island. Inside one of the aircraft, Sergeant Red faces them. He reveals that the instructors watched them throughout the training and agreed unanimously about the 4. The sergeant explains that the training was not only about survival, but a test to determine who would become a guardian of the human race. He then begins calling the names of Kuro, Simon, and Dimitri. And finally, Han Li, announcing that the 4 are on the list to advance to the 2nd year. On a rare day off at Ark, the cadets enjoy their free time. Jose approaches Han Li and suggests that they play soccer, since they haven't had a day off like that in a long time. Lying on his bed with a book, he simply questions, "Soccer?" With a ball in his hand, Jose asks if he knows how to play, and Lee Han confirms he does. On one of the academy fields, the cadets gather for a soccer match. Jose asks if everyone is satisfied with their teams, while Dimitri warns Del not to use psychic abilities. It was rare for them to have a day off unless something important was happening, such as the first-year instructors meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss which cadets would be promoted to the 2nd year. In the meeting room, John Red and Wei Chen are among the instructors present. ARC's chief director, Alexander Lacour, begins the meeting. Chief researcher Sasha Grace notes that there are 4 candidates this time and asks what they are like. Alexander states that Del Simon and Dimitri are more than fit to advance, but suggests they first discuss the other 2, starting with Han Li. Since he entered Ark, he has been ranked among the lowest in psychic ability. One of the instructors questions how he is on the list, saying that if it weren't for Red's special treatment, he would be stuck in Class D. Alexander then asks them to explain why a boy like that should be promoted. As witnessed in the training fight with Sergeant Red, Wei Chen explains that Han Li is not only remarkable in weapons training, but also has patience and a strong mentality, possessing everything a soldier needs. Alexander comments that he has never heard Wei speak so well of someone. John Red adds that regardless of his psychic potential, his telekinesis is quite sophisticated and that he used it to reinforce his spine. He continues, saying that the most impressive thing is that he acquired that ability on his own. No one taught him how to do that. After a moment of silence, Alexander decides to proceed. On the field, Jose praises Han Li for having some skill even without ever being trained, but he simply says he doesn't know. Nearby, Dimitri asks Del if the British aren't supposed to be good at soccer, but he questions what that has to do with him. Back in the meeting room, Sasha Grace slams her hand on the table and asks if they are joking. She looks at Kuro's profile on a holographic screen and exclaims that he is far too sensitive. One of the instructors reminds them that a strong mentality is exactly what is needed to endure the body conversion surgery that will take place after promotion. Sasha then accuses him, asking if he is trying to kill the child. John Red explains that there has been no child who demonstrated growth in psychic abilities at such speed as Kuro, but Alexander states that the problem is his mentality. John Red explains that they need Han Li to advance as well, because Kuro's mental stability is heavily affected by him. Alexander rubs his face, wondering why they are talking about Han Li again, while an instructor adds that he acts like an older brother to Kuro. He then comments that it seems they truly want the boy to advance. On the field, one of the players runs with the ball. Lee Han kicks the ball between the opposing team's players. Jose receives the ball and praises the pass. He advances with the ball, challenging the others to try to steal it if they can. Kuro positions himself as goalkeeper. Jose notes that Del and Dimitri, his opponents, are all in their positions. He then kicks the ball backward, passing it to Lee Han. Lee Han scores the goal and his team celebrates. Jose shakes Han's hand, saying that the plan worked and that they make a great team. A shadow suddenly appears over the 2 boys. John Red approaches and says that the meeting is over, but since they are all there, he will tell them the results now. He announces that all 4 will advance, to the surprise of Dimitri, Del, and Kuro. Jose taps Han Li's shoulder. He then asks why he has that look on his face and congratulates him for advancing to the 2nd year. Jose asks him to go ahead and save a spot for him, but Lee Han extends his hand and says that they will meet again. John Red interrupts them and orders them to return to their dormitories. He then orders those who will advance to pack their things. Lee Han turns and thanks the sergeant. He says he owes everything to him for having been elected class leader and for the outcome of the meeting. John Red warns him that now he will no longer be able to quit, and that they will meet again after second-year training. He then wishes that Han Li comes out of there alive. The boy simply salutes. John Red watches him from afar. At dusk, the four boys walk toward the dormitory. Dimitri asks if they should go already, while Del Simon stares at him. Kuro then confirms with Han Li if they should meet at the secondary infirmary.
Li Han holds Kuro's shoulder and tells him not to worry because they will have each other.
But Kuro confesses that he is very afraid, because now they will have to undergo that surgery to become adults. Dimitri raises his fist and says that there is nothing to fear, because it means they will become much stronger. Upon arriving at the secondary infirmary, a voice welcomes them. A woman introduces herself as Dr. Sasha Grace and informs them that she will be in charge of them for the next 5 weeks. Li Han then questions the 5-week period. She explains that during that time, their bodies will be fully matured, with the first 2 weeks in cultivation capsules and the following 3 in rehabilitation training. Dimitri, Del, and Kuro react to the information that they will spend 2 weeks in a machine like that. Li Han grips the strap of his bag. He then raises his hand and says goodbye, telling them he will see them in 2 weeks. The other 3 watch him. Dimitri and Kuro then join their hands with Li Han's. Sasha Grace observes the boys' interaction. Dimitri insists that Del join his hand with theirs, and he does. 1 week earlier, Sasha Grace orders the injection of the cultivation serum. Inside tanks, Li Han and Del Simon are submerged in a liquid. Octo, also submerged, complains that he feels like garbage. Meanwhile, Li Han feels as if he is suffocating. Sasha watches and asks them to hold on a little longer because they will fall asleep soon. She then reflects that today's procedure will decide their fate. Walking through the laboratory, the scientist questions whether saving the human race with so much effort is worth it. Her assistant comments that Professor Grace seems exhausted. Then, she suggests that the researcher should take a break. Sasha Grace approaches a break room. There, John Red asks why she is always in the secondary infirmary since she said she didn't care about the children. He stares at her intently. John then explains that he would be in trouble if she accidentally killed all of them. Sasha closes her eyes for a moment. She sits down and informs that since there were no problems, they are applying the second round of cultivation serum. Sasha explains that the second round is a concentrated formula of the dragon's psychic core, also known as Dragon Heart. John Red reflects that this will force their hearts to resonate with the core, generating a natural affinity with psychic abilities. Then, an alert sounds from Sasha's wrist device and the two turn. She runs hurriedly down the hallway. As she advances, the researcher asks what is happening. Inside the tank, Li Han thrashes around. The assistant arrives and warns that he regained consciousness and is likely in great pain. Sasha reaches out and says they need to get him out of there. She then tries to pull the tank lever, but her hand is stopped before reaching the control. John Red grabs her by the wrist and she asks why he is stopping her. He states that she cannot stop now, because that boy needs to reach the second year. Sometime later in her office, Sasha speaks with an older Li Han. She asks how he has been. With a smile, he answers that he is fine, thanks to her. Sasha then reveals that they had never seen a case like his, a psyker who rejects his own abilities. At that moment, Sasha had shouted that it would kill him, and that they needed to stop the procedures. She remembers that Han was not promoted because of his psychic abilities. John Red holds her and says to forget ability induction, because the boy would survive anyway. Back in the present, Sasha informs him that he will be registered as a special case and asks if he felt any irregularity. Li Han replies that he feels invigorated and that at least he will no longer be expelled because of his grades. The researcher reflects that the boy's willpower is impressive, and perhaps that was what the sergeant was looking for. She then dismisses him, concluding that his strong mentality must be linked to his rejection of psychic abilities. Dimitri greets him cheerfully, saying he waited for him and that now they are second-year students. Del Simon watches them from a distance. Li Han comments with a smile that the 5 weeks flew by. He then says that everyone has changed a lot, especially Kuro. Han then expresses his happiness that everyone came out alive. Del turns and warns him not to think he is the leader of the group. As Del walks away, Dimitri asks Han not to provoke him, explaining that he is just in his rebellious phase. The second-year facilities are similar to the first, but the cadets are divided into squads. Each squad has 4 to 10 members, with 12 squads existing in the second year. Li Han enters his room and reflects that he will need time to get used to an individual space. A boy introduces himself as Kato Suki, the leader of Squad 7, and confirms the identities of Han and Kuro. Gathered with the team, he informs them that although there is a lot of training, the focus will be on firearms, aerial combat, and simulations. Kato asks the reason for weapons training, and Han answers that it is to fight against minions. The leader explains that the identified minions are ogres, grunts, and werewolves, all with low intelligence. But those who act as commanders are the Elu, who possess high intellect and use psychic abilities. He then confirms that an Elu can use those abilities to defend against physical attacks. But unlike dragons, their psychic energy is limited and runs out. Kato highlights that aerial combat and battle simulations are important because they are a competition between squads. The simulations are reduced-scale trainings that take place in Ark's artificial forest. In the main event, Capture the Flag, the capacity and strategy of each squad are put to the test. He warns that although they do not use real blades, the steel weapons can cause serious injuries. Finally, aerial combat is an exercise to knock all members of the enemy team off their platforms. Kato explains that for aerial combat, it is essential to have a supporter, someone who controls multiple platforms for the team. He then tells Kuro that since the squad did not have a high-level psyker for that role, they no longer need to worry. Kuro seems apprehensive about the responsibility. The squad leader then asks if he is up to the task. A more robust teammate pressures him, asking why he is mumbling and saying that he must do what the squad demands. Lee Han intervenes, assuring that Kuro is the right guy, but explains that he does not do well under pressure. The veteran turns to Han and tells him to shut up, asking what a novice like him knows. Kato interrupts the discussion, saying that Han is right and that it is their first day. But he warns Han to mind his manners, since the others are his superiors with more experience. With a smile, Kato continues speaking. He reveals that, to be honest, he only accepted him because he wanted Kuro in the squad, and the two came as a package. Kato then tells Han not to get in the way, because he does not expect much from someone with the lowest level of psychic abilities. As the others laugh, Lee Han clenches his fist. He simply replies that it is fine. With a smile, Han extends his hand and promises that he will do his best not to get in the way of leader Kato. Kato reluctantly agrees. Lee Han then shakes his hand firmly. The squad leader decides to see how long the arrogant rookie will last. With a smile, Han accepts the challenge. Lee Han takes a shower. On a shooting range, the cadets practice with their rifles. He fires with precision at the targets. Kadosuke watches him from afar. Han runs forward through the course. He continues shooting at the targets while moving. The boy turns around, confident that Kato will no longer call him a burden. But he notices that Kuro looks nervous. One of the veterans shouts for Kuro to pull himself together. The boy fumbles with the rifle. Kato approaches, frustrated with the situation. Later in the shower, Lee Han wonders if he is still not good enough. He then dries himself off in his room after the bath. In the locker room, Kato informs Han that he is on standby. One of the veterans explains that in simulations, their squad already has many members specialized in close combat. Kato informs Han that he may watch the simulation in the training arena, so he does not feel bad about being left out. Holding a device, Han looks at a photo and states that it is no problem. In an arena, it is announced that today's Capture the Flag match will be between Squads 3 and 9. Kato points and tells a teammate that with the new faces in Squad 3, they should analyze the enemy's strategy. Lee Han then realizes that the newcomer can only be Del Simon. On the battlefield, Del Simon advances with his teammates. In the stands, the other cadets comment about the psychic prodigy. The leader of Squad 9 questions if the opposing team intends to start a full frontal engagement. One of the members of Squad 3 declares that they have nothing to lose with a great psyker on their side. Del Simon then states that he will take everyone out and grab their flag easily. The leader of the other squad orders his men to attack him before he can use his abilities. But the members of Squad 9 notice that their weapons have disappeared. Del extends his hand toward them. The swords then float above their heads to everyone's astonishment. With a single gesture, he launches the weapons at the opponents, who are hit. The leader of Squad 3 shouts for his team to advance. While Del Simon watches, his teammates charge into the attack. In a direct confrontation, Squad 3 overwhelms their opponents. The leader then raises the flag and celebrates the crushing victory. Back in the arena, Kato explains to Kuro that a talented psyker is essential, and that their strategy will be similar. Kuro remains apprehensive about the idea. Lee Han approaches and tells Kato that he does not think it is a good idea. He points out that Squad 9 did not use tactics, relying only on individual combat skill. Han begins to speak but hesitates. Kato then pressures him to continue. The squad leader questions him if he was going to suggest that he would be a better leader. Lee Han finally understands the reason for his superior's disdain. A veteran calls Han and gives him a thumbs up. The two then walk out of the arena together. The teammate says that although he is a talented recruit, he does not belong to Squad 7 and that the other members think the same. Lee Han understands that Kato was controlling him and asks why he does not belong to Squad 7. The veteran explains that Han is not afraid to confront the leader, and that occasionally he makes better decisions than him. But the squad can only have one leadership. because if the others start questioning Kato, it will cause division. He then warns that as long as Kato is the leader, Han will never participate in the simulation training and should request a transfer. Lee Han closes his eyes for a moment. He now understands that the squad needs absolute faith in the leader, and he was threatening that bond. The boy then considers the idea of being transferred to another squad. The day ends at ARC's facilities. Before an instructor, Lee Han presents his request. Wei Chen analyzes the document and asks if the cadet is sure about the decision. With a smile, Han confirms that he is. The instructor explains that he will need a meeting with the other second-year superiors, which may take time. Back in his room, Han thinks that this will give him the time he needs. While waiting, he decides to focus on his personal training and analyze the competitions of the other squads. The door opens and Kuro enters the room, calling for him. Kuro asks about the conversation with the commander, but Han only wants to know if he is ready for the aerial combat tomorrow. He then reveals that he can now move 4 platforms simultaneously. Kuro confirms that he can move them with people on them. Impressed, Han says that this growth puts him at the top of all second-year students. He then encourages Kuro not to be nervous, because he will be cheering for him. The friend simply thanks him for the support. In the arena, the other cadets comment about the amazing recruit from Squad 7 and cannot wait to see him in action. From within the crowd, Han watches Kuro on the big screen. On the platform, Kato tells the team to advance, because they are counting on their supporter. Kuro then focuses for the start of the combat. The aerial combat battle between Squad 1 and Squad 7 begins. Aerial combat is crucial, since most dragons can fly, and the platforms are used together with other equipment. In competitions, each person controls 2 platforms to move or directly attack the opponent. But the most important position is the supporter, who controls multiple platforms to minimize the team's energy consumption. Han watches the screen, knowing that the position is perfect for Kuro, who can control 4 platforms at once. Kato orders Squad 7 to advance, confident that victory is certain if they follow the plan. He then commands the vanguard to take their positions. Squad 1 advances to attack. A member of Squad 7's vanguard advances, noticing that the opponent moved exactly as Kato predicted. 2 members of Squad 1 exchange a look and prepare themselves. They then separate and move to the sides. An opponent leaps toward one of the vanguard members. The Squad 7 cadet is hit and knocked off his platform. Meanwhile, Kato strikes one of the opponents with a blow. With a smile, he watches the opponent fall, satisfied that everything is going as planned. In the stands, the cadets comment that Squad 7 seems to know exactly where the enemy team would move. In a previous meeting, Kato explained that since Squad 1 did not have a strong supporter, Kuro would be crucial for the strategy. Han then instructed his friend to use his premonition to move the platforms according to the enemy team's actions. The veteran agreed, saying that they could knock everyone out if they focused on close combat. Watching the match, Lee Han concludes that for now, Kato's plan is working. In the arena, the 2 veterans prepare to continue. Kuro concentrates to the maximum, knowing that one mistake could cost the team the victory. He then uses his ability to predict the movements of the battle. A member of Squad 1 attacks and knocks down one of Squad 7's cadets. The last 2 members of the enemy team realize that only they remain. Squad 7 positions themselves to face the 2 opponents, with Kuro in the rear. The enemies realize they cannot win if they do not eliminate the supporter. The leader of Squad 1 signals to his teammate, indicating that they will use Plan A. The other cadet understands the signal. He then advances at high speed. Kato prepares for what seems to be a simple frontal battle and warns that the enemy is coming, but the opponent uses his fallen teammate as a springboard to jump over the vanguard. He then flies between the 2 members of Squad 7. The other enemy grabs them from behind, and Kato shouts for his men to block him. The first attacker manages to pass and moves forward, leaving the others behind. Kato turns around and watches the opponent approach Kuro. A teammate shouts for him to stop chasing him, since the other enemy is determined to knock them down. From the stands, Han realizes that they should have protected Kuro so that he would not be separated from the squad. In a previous conversation, Kato instructed Kuro to keep platforms 4 and 8 always by his side. The opponent flies directly toward Kuro. The boy then remembers platforms 4 and 8. He summons both platforms and uses them to defend against the attack. The enemy prepares to attack again with his sword. Kuro appears exhausted after the effort. The other member of Squad 1 is finally defeated and falls. The remaining members of Squad 7 watch the fallen enemy. Kato then advances and asks what is happening in the rear. The last member of Squad 1 stands over Kuro's body. With a smile, he stares at the opposing team. The enemy flies through and knocks the last members of Squad 7 off their platforms. In the stands, the spectators comment that although his abilities were amazing, he lacked combat capability. Lee Han understands that Kato's plan relied solely on Kuro's psychic abilities. Fallen on the ground, Kuro tries to use his powers, but the opponent strikes the platform in front of him. The platform explodes and the enemy watches Kuro on the ground. Kuro remains down, panting. The opponent raises his weapon and laments the situation. The pressure on Kuro led him to make a mistake. The screen announces Squad 1's victory and the crowd cheers. Han then reflects that if it were him, he would not have left Kuro alone. 3 weeks later, Wei Chen calls Han to discuss the documents he submitted. The instructor informs him that his request to form a new squad has been approved. Han receives the unexpected news. Wei Chen explains that due to his high aptitude for leadership, the instructors decided to test his popularity and charisma. He then hands him the conditions, which require at least 4 members and allow recruiting only 1 person from each squad. With these rules, Han knows that the other leaders will do everything to stop him from taking their main members. But he clenches his fist, determined to form the squad if he can recruit the members. Wei Chen says goodbye, saying he is looking forward to seeing what he will do, and Han leaves the room. As he walks, the boy remembers Jose and Kuro, the first people he thought of. Since Jose is not around, he decides to speak with Kuro first. Han stops for a moment in the hallway, but suddenly he remembers that there is one more person. He then goes to Dimitri's door and knocks. Dimitri opens the door with a smile and asks what he wants. A young man holds his head and complains aloud. He tells a teammate that their win rate keeps dropping because of Kuro, and that they should have recruited Simon, even if it was hard. Then he praises Del Simon's abilities, who not only fights well, but also defeated several enemies alone with his powers. Kuro listens from a distance to the comment that he can't do anything alone, and that his abilities are overrated. He remains listening as the men say they only use him in battles because they have no one else to fill the position. Elsewhere, Dmitry Vladimirovich Petrov asks if a new squad is being formed, and who else is being considered besides him. Lee Han replies that he started all of this to have Kuro on his team, but Dmitry doubts any leader would simply hand over their member. He then points at Dmitry, reminding him that his question still hasn't been answered. Dmitry thanks him for the offer but refuses directly, saying his answer is no. He explains that he is next in line to become the Squad 5 leader and cannot simply abandon his teammates. Lee Han reacts for a moment and then closes his eyes, saying he understands. Dmitry turns and stretches his neck, saying there is one more thing. He then states that he finds it more fun to be an opponent than an ally. With a tap on the shoulder, Dmitry warns him not to cry next time, and Lee Han replies that he'll break both his arms. As Lee Han walks away, 2 people comment about his desire to become a leader. As Lee Han walks away, other guys comment that he is a cocky punk, but he ignores them. Then he stops, since the announcement of his squad formation made all the leaders evaluate him. One of them stares at him and asks if that is how Lee Han repays him. He says he doesn't care if he leaves or forms a new squad, but he cannot take Kuro. The leader and his teammates stand in front of Lee Han, but Lee Han states that Kuro will not reach his full potential under his leadership. The leader argues back, telling him not to be arrogant, because Kuro will become a great member of Squad 7. Then Lee Han asks if he would also wait for the enemy in a war, assuring that he can take Kuro to his maximum potential now. He adds that a commander's duty is to lead his team to victory despite limitations, and blaming others doesn't change the result. The leader grabs him by the collar, shouting that no matter what he says, he cannot take Kuro. Lee Han simply replies that the decision is not his, but Kuro's. Then the other guy turns and looks toward Kuro, calling his name. He threatens him, saying that if he decides to leave, he will kill him. Kuro reacts to the direct threat from his leader, but Lee Han provokes him, saying he is all talk and would keep talking even while they buried him. The leader punches Lee Han, who falls to the ground. As he recovers, the leader grumbles, and Lee Han wipes the corner of his mouth, saying he'll let it go because he doesn't want to be called in because of that. Lee Han then turns and begins to walk away while the other watches him. He stops next to Kuro and says he will be waiting for him. One of the guys comments that no one would betray their squad to join a leader who hasn't even proven himself, and another adds that he might not even be able to form the team. Kuro remains silent with a worried expression. Lee Han walks down a hallway, thinking that he has already reached out to everyone he had in mind. He wonders what else he can do, because at this rate he might really fail. Distracted, he bumps into a person wearing a skull mask and apologizes. The person walks away quickly, and Lee Han is surprised by their speed. He then wonders if it is allowed to wear the uniform that way. Suddenly, his wrist device starts beeping. He reads the message summoning all squad leaders to the secondary infirmary. Outside the building, several squad leaders are lined up in 2 rows. Sasha Grace announces that 6 cadets have leveled up and are awaiting assignment, and that the new squad leader will have the first choice. Sasha Grace then calls Lee Han to step forward, and he sees this as his chance to recruit at least 1 member. He introduces himself as the leader of Squad 13, stating that they are short on members and that anyone is welcome. Other cadets react with disdain, commenting that short on members means he has no one, but Jose raises his hand and volunteers. The others react surprised, shouting Jose's name. Later that night, in a room, someone comments that it's a pity. Jose tells Lee Han that it would have been nice to get one more person, but Lee Han thinks it makes sense since it's a new squad. He thanks Jose for trusting him and joining his team. Jose replies that he always wanted to be on the same team as him and that the others would have lined up if they knew his talent. Then he stretches, saying they can continue recruiting tomorrow and that he's going back to his room. Just as he prepares to leave, someone knocks on the door. The door opens and Kuro appears in the doorway, surprising Lee Han, who calls his name. Lee Han asks what happened to his face as Kuro, covered in bandages, scratches his head. He says he told Kato about leaving Squad 7 and that in the end, the leader didn't have the guts to kill him. Lee Han says that's amazing and asks if he is the same Kuro he knew, but he replies it was nothing. Jose celebrates that the island team is together again, and that with the three of them, no one will be able to stop them. Then a fourth person approaches, saying they look like they are having fun and asking if there is room for one more. He addresses Lee Han, stating that everyone considers him a traitor, which is why Squad 13 will be the most interesting. Jose reminds Lee Han that the newcomer was in Class B, and Lee Han agrees that they need him in the squad. The boy named Knuth makes a hand gesture. He says he is looking forward to working with Squad 13, and asks if that means they can officially form the new squad. Lee Han confirms, but warns that now they are enemies of everyone and can be disbanded if they fail, which would bring consequences. Kuro and Knuth declare that they already expected that. The new Squad 13 gathers, aware of the immense weight on their shoulders. With a determined look, Lee Han says goodbye, saying he'll see them tomorrow. A man welcomes Squad 13. He introduces himself as Grossman, the head instructor of the second-year students. Grossman then identifies the squad leader, Lee Han, and the members Jose Batista and Knuth. He turns to Kuro and asks what happened to his face. Kuro replies that he fell down the stairs. With a smile, Grossman simply tells him to be careful. He then informs them that starting that day, the squad will have a 3-week period before entering the matches. After that, they will participate in the confrontations, with opponent and category chosen at random. Lee Han understands that Grossman is warning them not to take the situation lightly. The competition is a weapons survival match against Squad 9, who have the highest scores in firearms training. In the middle of the forest, Knuth removes his helmet, complaining that it is suffocating and that all they need to do is not get hit. Lee Han hits him on the head, asking if he is trying to get himself killed. He then grabs him and orders him to never take off the helmet under any circumstances. Lee Han states that he will not let anyone in his squad die and announces that the name of the operation is Mobile Bunker, asking them not to laugh. The squad members question the name Mobile Bunker. Then a signal sounds, announcing the start of the weapons survival match between Squad 9 and Squad 13. Squad 9 prepares, with their leader stating they will finish everything quickly and easily, but Lee Han gathers his team, telling them to show what they are capable of. Elsewhere, a crowd watches the broadcast and yells for Squad 9 to eliminate the traitors. Dimitri watches the crowd and comments on their popularity. Del Simon also watches and wonders what Lee Han's plan will be, since a direct firefight is a shot in the dark. In the forest, Squad 9 advances and notices there is no sign of the opponents, who seem to be waiting at the starting line. A member decides to approach them, but realizes they are faster than he expected. Knuth touches his device and reports that Squad 9 is at 660 feet and that he is on his way. The overview of the battlefield shows the positions of both teams. A member of Squad 9 hides behind a tree, realizing they are already coming in his direction. Jose and Kuro catch their breath, with Jose commenting that Squad 9 gives them no time to breathe. They manage to prepare everything but need time to recover their strength. Lee Han watches from a distance, saying that Knuth probably already knows that and should be doing something else instead of joining them. A gunshot echoes through the forest. Then Knuth is shot in the leg while running. He reacts to the wound but keeps moving. He points in a direction and shouts, drawing the enemy squad while dragging himself. Then he turns to face his pursuers. He fires his weapon repeatedly, determined to take at least one of them with him. But the members of Squad 9 dodge the shots, saying no one would get hit by that. Knuth falls to the ground after the recoil of his shots. He is hit by more shots while lying on the ground. Even wounded, he gets up and decides that it is wiser to buy time for his team. Squad 9 questions why there is only one of them, and why they would need a lookout for a group of 4. One of the members volunteers to go ahead, asking his teammates for cover. The remaining 3 members of the squad prepare to provide cover. Far away, Lee Han warns that it is time to move, as Knuth has bought them enough time. Jose assumes he must be wounded, and Lee Han concludes that he decided it was better to buy time than join them immediately. Jose explains that thanks to Knuth, they recovered a lot of strength since they used their powers to knock down a tree. They combined their abilities to cut the trunk. Lee Han declares that now it is their turn to show what they can do, with the tree trunk floating in front of them. The crowd watches Squad 13 moving with the fallen tree and wonders if they are using it as a shield. Dimitri and Del Simon observe, and Dimitri comments that the strategy was only possible because of Kuro. Meanwhile, Knuth keeps shooting to buy time. His weapon runs out of ammunition, and a Squad 9 member surprises him. The enemy soldier asks if he is alone and says the tactic was pathetic. Dimitri comments that one member of Squad 13 has been eliminated and questions if they can win with just the tree shield. But Del Simon states there is a critical disadvantage in that tactic and that Lee Han must already know that. Squad 9 shoots at the trunk, realizing it is getting closer and that they cannot stop it. Their leader realizes that since he chose only shooters, there is no one with psychic ability to push the object away. He understands that Lee Han discovered this weakness and keeps advancing with the suppressing fire. One of the members is hit, and the leader shouts for everyone to hide behind the trees. He orders his team to buy time, since their psychic will eventually get tired. Lee Han knows the plan is not perfect, but explains that the tree shield is only a way to get close. Then Jose uses his ability to ignite the vegetation ahead, creating a barrier of fire and smoke. The members of Squad 9 are caught off guard by the fire and the smoke spreading quickly. The crowd reacts to the tactic, questioning the ignition ability and the smoke covering the enemy squad. Jose informs Lee Han about the smoke cover, and he instructs him to eliminate anyone who tries to escape. Two members of the enemy squad remain disoriented in the smoke. One of them is then hit and eliminated from the match. The leader of Squad 9 realizes that two of his men have been eliminated and tells the last teammate to remain calm. Suddenly, the last two members are hit by an object. It is revealed that they are equipped with vision capable of seeing through anything. Lee Han then fires his weapon with precision. Squad 13's victory is announced, and the crowd celebrates, impressed with Lee Han's aim and Kuro's strategy. Dimitri celebrates the victory, while Del Simon watches the result. On the battlefield, the members of Squad 13 celebrate the success of the mission. A man watches the crowd and the broadcast of the match. Grossman observes the scene, mentioning Lee Han's name. Squad 13 toasts in celebration. One of them comments that he can't believe they got a special meal for the victory. Lee Han says that all the work was worth it, and Jose reminds them that Knuth even got shot, but he says Jose has no idea what it's like. In the middle of the meal, someone suggests a toast. Jose then points at Lee Han, asking for a toast from the leader who led them to victory. He thanks everyone and says that although the tactic was risky, they won because each person played their role. The squad members listen attentively to their leader, but Kuro disagrees, stating that it wasn't risky, but rather a great plan. Lee Han explains that they were lucky because Squad 9's strength made them easier to predict, since it was obvious they would face the best shooters. Knuth praises Lee Han's ability to read the other team's tactics, saying he knew he wasn't wrong to choose him. Suddenly, Knuth doubles over in pain, and Jose asks if he shouldn't be resting. He insists it's nothing and that he can't miss a meal like that even if he dies. Laughter echoes from their room late into the night. In a dark room, Grossman is sitting at his desk. He reflects that he didn't imagine they would defeat Squad 9, which he himself had chosen, and decides he needs to contain them before they think they're special. Grossman analyzes the options on his screen, considering Squad 7 for the next match. He reflects that Squad 7 would do anything to defeat Squad 13, but wonders about the possibility of another victory for them. Then he decides that all he needs to do is make sure Squad 7 cannot lose. That night, Lee Han lies in his bed, unable to sleep. He sits up and compares the situation to the worry of being expelled, but reassures himself by thinking that now he has the best members on his team. With determination, he states that they will win again, no matter who the opponent is. The next challenge is announced: Squad 1 versus Squad 13 in a mission to defeat the captain. Gathered with his team, the leader of Squad 1 asks if everyone remembers the strategy. He instructs them to be careful with Kuro and Jose, who are unmatched in their psychic abilities among the second-year students. The leader tells a teammate that those two will be marked to break their concentration, and the other agrees. He ties a headband, stating that although he doesn't know the ability of the other two, it won't matter. A bulky team member declares that they will make their captain the strongest man in the arc. In the audience, Dimitri comments to Del Simon that they must have angered the instructor to face Squad 1 right after the previous battle. The mission rule is clear. Victory is achieved only by defeating the captain with the headband, but he is too strong to be taken down easily. With his frontal assault specialty, the captain leads the group while the others block long-range support to annihilate the enemy squad. Dimitri says he can't wait to see Lee Han's strategy, but Del Simon tells him to shut up and watch. A member of Squad 1 comes across the opposing team. He wonders why Kuro is the captain. His teammates question what to do, since they also can't see Lee Han. A voice tells Kuro to relax, and he agrees. Jose and Knuth position themselves in front, ensuring that the two of them will protect him. The opposing captain orders his team to advance as planned, because it doesn't matter if Lee Han is hiding. Then Squad 1 advances for the attack. Lee Han suddenly appears. He leaps into the trees, distancing himself from his team and drawing the enemy's attention. The 3 remaining members of Squad 13 prepare for the confrontation. The 2 teams face each other in close combat. Jose attacks one of the opponents with his power, but the enemy says he doesn't stand a chance. The opponent dodges the strike and advances against him. Meanwhile, another soldier breaks Knuth's weapon. Lee Han signals to Kuro, saying they are almost ready. Lee Han jumps from a great height, stating there is no reason to worry because they practiced a lot. The captain of Squad 1 prepares to attack. Jose and Knuth then throw themselves on top of the captain to immobilize him. Their leader orders his teammates to hold them, declaring the maneuver perfect. Lee Han flies toward Kuro as the enemy squad approaches. The 2 soldiers advance to attack Kuro with their weapons, declaring certain victory, but Kuro raises his arms using his ability. The soldier stops the attack, confused about where Kuro is looking. Then a strong impact hits the ground behind him. The 2 enemies turn toward the direction of the impact. Kuro takes advantage of the distraction to raise a cloud of dust around him. The enemy soldier questions what is happening as Kuro recovers from the effort. The captain is thrown violently against the ground, while Jose and Knuth catch their breath. Kuro kneels over the defeated captain, surrounded by the remaining members of Squad 1. Lee Han then appears holding the headband and states that they captured the captain. The match ends with the announcement of Squad 13's victory, leaving the audience in silence. Then the crowd begins questioning Lee Han's jump, which was higher than a 5-story building, and erupts in celebration. Dimitri comments that everyone was rooting for his death, but understands the reaction, since Lee Han has shown one spectacular strategy after another. They wonder who that incredible leader is, and why Squad 7's leader never made use of such talent. The former leader of Squad 7 clenches his fist upon realizing that he obviously failed to recognize Lee Han's talent. One day before the battle against Squad 1, Lee Han is hurled high into the air during training. Kuro then tries to control his teammate's descent with his hands, but the boy ends up colliding with the ground. Kuro comments that they will have no problems in the real battle, and Lee Han praises him for being amazing. He then questions Lee Han's courage, saying he would only risk breaking his nose in training instead of his own life the next day. Lee Han explains that controlling a living person with telekinesis is extremely difficult. Otherwise, every psychic would be able to fly. He details his plan to jump from a high place, asking Kuro to control the speed of his fall. Back in the present, Kuro apologizes repeatedly for his teammate's broken arm. With his arm already immobilized, Lee Han reassures him, stating that he did well in a difficult task. During the meal, Knuth Meyer tells Kuro not to blame himself, because without him, the beast would not have been defeated. Jose then asks if they will have no more scheduled battles until Lee Han recovers. Suddenly, a battle notification for 2 days from now appears for everyone. Lee Han then stands up and walks with determination. He approaches a large double door. On the other side, Instructor Grossman awaits him. The door opens and Grossman comments that he did not expect that visit. But in truth, the one who enters the room is Kato Suki. Outside, Jose is outraged at the situation, saying that with an injured teammate, the battle against Squad 7 is a guaranteed loss. He goes on complaining, stating that the situation is unfair and that they should protest. Grossman explains to Kato that the intention is to make Squad 7 win and asks if he is not confident. He then states that they would win anyway and orders the squad leader to ensure victory. Already outside, Kato realizes that the instructor did not listen to him. He then walks down the hallway. Meanwhile, Lee Han tells his teammates that crying will not change anything, and that all they need to do is win. He admits that he has not yet thought of a strategy, but assures them he will find a way for them to win before the battle. From afar, Kato finds the scene fascinating. He then approaches Lee Han and hopes he is not just bluffing, asking if he will be okay with his arm in that state. Lee Han states that, although it is a bit much at the moment, his right arm should be enough to defeat Squad 7. Kato steps closer to him and warns that he will be humiliated to death if he does not do his best. He then points at the boy and threatens to kill both him and Kuro. Kato glares back at him. Lee Han warns him not to make threats he cannot carry out. Then Kato walks away, shouting for them to just wait and see. Jose calls him a resentful bastard. Lee Han admits they will not be easy opponents and suggests that for now they head to the gym. They then make their way there. In the gym, Lee Han uses his ability to levitate an air bit. The device floats in the air in front of him. He explains that in his best condition he can control 2 air bits at most, but now he can barely manage one. He then watches his teammates training. It does not seem easy for Jose to control 2 air bits while using his combustion ability. Lee Han thinks they could rely only on Kuro, but does not want to place such a heavy psychological burden on him. He considers that Squad 7 is well balanced, and their teamwork, strengthened by Kato, makes them even stronger. In light of that, he concludes that they cannot beat them in a direct confrontation. Jose then approaches and tells Lee Han that there is a problem. Jose demonstrates his combustion ability. He explains that with nothing flammable in the air, his power does not pose a great threat. And since everyone will be flying quickly, It will not be easy to aim at them either. Lee Han listens to his teammates' analysis. From a distance, a member of the enemy squad mocks their skill level. He tells Kato there is nothing to worry about, and the leader agrees. Lee Han then realizes there is no way for them to win, nor any reason for their opponents to lose. On the day of the confrontation, the other cadets comment on Squad 13's battle even with Lee Han injured and lacking aerial experience. Dimitri comments that they were basically lined up to lose, calling Instructor Grossman a horrible man. Del Simon is at his side. Dimitri then pulls him closer, saying it is disgusting and that he should just stay by his side. Del explains that Grossman decides the matchups based on data analysis to keep everyone's win probability at 50%. He concludes that it will be difficult to win this battle, thinking of Lee Han. In the arena, Squad 7 waits in formation. On the other side, Squad 13 positions themselves for the start of the battle. Kato orders them to completely destroy their opponents, and his teammate reinforces that they must show what happens to traitors. Lee Han asks Jose about his condition, and he replies that he could not be better and will burn everything. The boy then asks Jose to take good care of them, since he is the core of the strategy. The battle begins, and a voice announces for both teams to launch their air bits. Squad 7 then launches 6 air bits in total, but Squad 13 surprises everyone by launching a much larger number of devices. Kato reacts upon noting his own team's count of 6 air bits. He then realizes that their opponents have launched 16 air bits in total. His teammate states that it is impossible for Kuro to control 10 air bits alone, and asks for orders. Lee Han tells Kato that he looks perplexed and offers to clear his thoughts in an instant. 16 air bits float above Squad 13. 2 members of Squad 7 question whether that is really possible. Kato then says not to be shaken by it. He orders them to follow the plan and destroy them calmly one by one. The members of Squad 13 advance on their air bits. Lee Han explains that they did not rest while training their telekinesis. And even with his telekinesis below average, he learned to concentrate his powers wherever he wanted. Using that ability, he can do more than just control objects with telekinesis. He can send them flying even faster. A single air bit shoots forward at high speed, forcing Squad 7 to scatter. Kato is surprised by the speed and by the way they are using all of their air bits. But he states that as long as it does not come straight at him, he can always react. During training, Jose had explained that his combustion ability was not very useful without flammable material in the air. Jose then unleashes his combustion ability. Lee Han then reveals that he came up with something that could be burned during the aerial battle. The flammable material was the air bit itself, which explodes in the middle of Squad 7. The explosion spreads across the arena. From the stands, Dimitri and Del Simon react to the scene. The crowd cheers at the explosions, shouting for them to blow up all the devices. Lee Han and Jose continue their combined attack. A series of explosions lights up the combat arena. Kato orders his teammates to block the attack, but they fear being caught in the explosion. Instructor Grossman runs across the arena. He orders them to stop immediately. In the chaos, Kato shouts Lee Han's name. Lee Han recalls the moment when Grossman stared at him for 10 minutes in his office. The instructor breaks the silence, saying he knows it is strange to start that way. He then asks Lee Han if he knows how much each airbit costs. The boy replies that he is aware they are expensive. Grossman states that if he were not a member of ARC, it would be an amount he could not pay for the rest of his life. Lee Han asks if he was not called there because of his strategy. Grossman gestures with his hand. The instructor explains that although the tactic was not against the rules, it was controversial. He objects to the strategy and asks to be informed next time, and the boy agrees. Lee Han then asks to pose one more question, and Grossman allows him to speak. He argues that if they were fighting dragons, the strategy would not be controversial, because they need to win at all costs. Then Lee Han asks if that is not the purpose of their training. Grossman begins to laugh and comments that he sounds exactly like someone he knows. He praises Lee Han's attitude and says he looks forward to his future matches. The instructor dismisses him, and the squad leader salutes. Back in the battle, Kato clenches his fist. He charges toward Lee Han on his airbit. Then an explosion hits him in midair. He realizes that his opponent intends to fall alongside him. Already on the ground, Kato points at the fallen opponents and states that no one will value him for winning with such a cowardly strategy. Lee Han states that will be decided later and asks if Kato waited just to tell him that, but he denies it. He walks away, promising to crush him anyway, and warns him not to lose to anyone else until then. The sun sets over the dormitory. Back in their room, the team welcomes their leader with a meal. With his arm still in a sling, Lee Han greets them. They discuss the victory, with Kuro confirming the decision, and Knuth commenting that although it was not against the rules, it was a strange win. Kuro then asks Jose what bothers him, and he replies that something always happens during their banquets. He then points at his watch with a mischievous grin. As expected, the same happens with the others. Suddenly, everyone looks at their watches in shock. A notification for a Capture the Flag match against Squad 5 in 7 days is displayed. Elsewhere, Dimitri strains under the bench press, thinking it is to fight the strongest in that format. Li-Han comments that it is exactly like Instructor Grossman, and that it is one thing after another. Later, Dimitri finishes his run down the street. Satisfied with the training, he fans himself, complaining about the heat and saying he wants to go back as fast as possible to take a shower. As he walks down the street, Dimitri crosses paths with someone coming from the opposite direction. A cadet with long hair walks past him. Dimitri then turns and tells him to wait. He calls him ex-squad leader, correcting himself right after since he is now the leader. The young man then grabs him, asking if he will be ignored now that he is at level 3. Dimitri boasts that Squad 5 has been doing incredibly well since he became the leader. The former leader then tells him to get away before he kills him. Dimitri asks what is wrong with him. He then suggests that after they fight, he can hear the details. In a forest, Li-Han positions himself to fight. He questions what is wrong with his opponent. A hooded and incredibly strong adversary charges toward him. The opponent then reveals a skull mask beneath the hood. He then disappears and reappears in the blink of an eye. The masked fighter attacks him at high speed. Li-Han ends up falling to the ground, defeated. 6 days earlier, he reacts with surprise in Grossman's office, who asks if the information is true. The instructor confirms, but says he cannot reveal the details at the moment. A scene shows the former leader of Squad 5 standing over a man's body. Grossman explains that Dimitri was injured and will not be able to participate, but the match will proceed as scheduled. Li-Han understands that without Dimitri, Squad 5 will be an easy win. The instructor then says he called him there for another reason and holds up some papers. He hands Li-Han a transfer request for his squad. Grossman praises Li-Han's ability to utilize his teammates, and the boy thinks he already expected something like that. The transfer requests are from several level 2 cadets who could compete immediately. Grossman suggests he think carefully, but Li-Han accepts them immediately, stating they are not in a position to choose. Li-Han welcomes the 4 new members of Squad 13. He then introduces them as Domingo, Kasim, and Andy. And lastly, Jonggijo. He informs them that they will start preparing the next day, and that he will observe their abilities to assign roles, asking if anyone objects. Jonggijo then calls out to squad leader Li-Han. He asks Li-Han to take good care of him, because he is also Korean. Li-Han replies that nationality is irrelevant in the arc, and that he must prove his worth with his abilities, causing Jonggijo to retreat. The leader dismisses them, and Jonggijo quietly insults him for being so strict. He then turns and mutters an offense. Andy asks Kasim what the word means, and he explains it is a Korean curse word he heard in a drama. On the day of the match, the arena dome closes, creating a nighttime environment for the Capture the Flag match. The members of Squad 13 complain about the cheap trick to make them lose. Li-Han calms them, saying not to get worked up because the opponent is in the same environment, and suggests waiting for their eyes to adjust. Li-Han assigns Knuth's team to lead while Jose's team acts as reinforcements. He, Gijo, and Kuro will flank from the side. Li-Han states that without Dimitri, Squad 5 will be the easiest opponent they have faced, but instructs them not to lower their guard. 10 minutes earlier, the lead and reinforcement teams took their positions. Li-Han then announces that his group will also advance. 5 minutes earlier, Knuth's team advances against a member of Squad 5. With the enemies defeated, one member questions if all were eliminated, but another points to the flag. Knuth Meyer points at a lone opponent near the flag. The hooded figure remains seated beside the objective. He then stands to face them, and the team questions if he merely watched while his teammates were defeated. The lone opponent charges and attacks several team members simultaneously. Suddenly, Li-Han is grabbed from behind. Kuro shoves him out of the way, shouting for him to be careful. He then takes the hit in his place, being thrown far away. Li-Han watches the scene. Li-Han realizes the opponent possesses a teleportation ability. With no time to be surprised, he immediately moves to counterattack. But the masked opponent retreats with agility as Li-Han strikes. Jonggijo questions if they will even be able to get close enough to touch him. He then charges with a swing of his weapon. The opponent leaps over him, dodging the attack. Gijo expresses his frustration at the failed strike. The opponent hits him with a precise kick. With Jonggijo defeated on the ground, the masked opponent turns to the next one. In the stands, cadets wonder who the masked fighter is, and one suggests the name Silence. The name Silence spreads through the crowd amid surprised whispers. Del Simon reacts upon hearing the name. He explains that after an incident, Silence lost his voice, but his battle abilities developed abnormally, making him a level 3. Spectators question the legality of a level 3 participating, while the fighter activates a device on his wrist. The masked opponent turns around. Lee Han declares that he does not know who his opponent is, but he has no intention of losing. He then calls him Skull Mask. Lee Han then focuses his ability on the tip of his weapon. With that, the two prepare to face each other. Del Simon realizes the opponent is Silence, who is on a completely different level from the others. He then concludes there is no way to win and wonders what Lee Han will do. Lee Han knows it's over if he cannot block the next attack, but he won't lose that easily. He analyzes that the opponent's teleportation distance is approximately 15 meters at a time. The victory condition is capturing the flag, not defeating him, so he can win if he can interrupt him momentarily. And he believes he can interrupt him. He notices that he can interrupt him at the exact moment he uses his ability. The area around the opponent blurs slightly at the moment of teleportation. He then observes the teleportation points and begins counting 1, 2. On the third, he strikes the exact spot where Silence reappears. The masked opponent reacts, surprised by the interception. Lee Han then uses his ability to block the opponent's attack. He stretches out his arm to reach the flag right behind his opponent, but the opponent grabs him by the neck before he can take it. Then the masked fighter prepares for the finishing blow. Suddenly, a projectile hits the masked opponent in the head. The hit lands cleanly. Part of his mask breaks from the impact. He then retreats, momentarily disoriented. His mask then shatters. Lee Han, already back on his feet, says that recovering consciousness in 3 seconds was impressive, but it was enough time for him to capture the flag. He then turns and declares his win to Skull Mask. In the stands, the crowd reacts to Lee Han's victory against a level 3. Del Simon grits his teeth. Elsewhere, Kuro calls a cat while holding a piece of wood. He then feeds it, commenting that there was a similar cat near the orphanage. Kuro explains that he had no friends because he wasn't good at anything and looked different. He then states that now he has something he is good at, and also has friends. Jung Gijo approaches and asks Kuro what he is doing there. He then explains that he thought they could discuss something on their day off. Jung Gijo steps closer to Kuro and says that their squad does not have a vice leader at the moment. He then volunteers for the position and asks for his teammates' support. Annoyed by the cat rubbing on his leg, Gijo kicks it away for interrupting his conversation. Kuro reacts to his teammates' behavior. He then tells Jong Gijo to get out of his way. The two face each other in the courtyard. Kuro then releases his ability. Gijo watches in fear as a nearby trash can begins to tremble. The trash can is then completely crushed by force. A stone floating in the air is also pulverized. The fragments fly past Gijo's face. Kuro warns him to never do that again, and Gijo agrees, terrified. After the confrontation, Kuro runs off, leaving his teammate exhausted on the ground. The cat that was kicked earlier calmly jumps. It walks in front of the hospital room where Lee Han is visiting Dimitri. Dimitri, his head bandaged, asks Lee Han what brings him there. Certain it isn't for fun, Lee Han listens attentively. Dimitri says he can only make assumptions since the Ark he keeps it secret. But now that he sees him, everything makes sense. The boy then asks if it was a level 3 that put him in that condition. He confirms it was his former squad leader, admitting that a level 3 is on a completely different level. Dimitri grips his bedsheet and corrects himself, saying it's not just a different level. He reveals he couldn't make a single move before being defeated. Then he adds that his attacker didn't seem like himself, acting as if he had gone insane. Lee Han suggests that if he wasn't like that before, it may be related to level 3 activities. His friend then points out that there is more than enough to complete the training up to level 2, making Lee Han realize something. Lee Han concludes that they will fight in real combat before reaching level 3, and Dimitri questions what happens upon reaching that stage. In an unknown place, a figure wearing advanced armor approaches a bright light. The light reveals a long corridor ahead. On the other side of the corridor, the cat strolls calmly down the sidewalk. Kuro then runs toward the feline, saying he finally found it. Kuro picks up the cat, apologizes, and invites it to come back and eat more snacks. Suddenly, he is startled by something in front of him while holding the cat. A figure in imposing armor appears before him, and Kuro asks who he is. Kuro asks who the mysterious figure is, but recognizes the voice. The armor helmet opens, revealing the person's identity. Sergeant Red greets Kuro, commenting that he changed so much he barely recognized him. He then mentions that the boy is far from his quarters in the Ark Development Center. Red grabs 2 cans from a vending machine and offers one to Kuro, telling him to wait for a car. Kuro accepts the drink and asks if the sergeant isn't angry. The man then asks why he would ask that. Red explains that there's no problem with him discovering the Psycho Frame, since level 2s cannot leave Ark. Kuro then understands that they are considered assets and cannot leave until they become unable to fight. The sergeant confirms the information. He then states that people who get angry for no reason are just lunatics, making Kuro flinch. Suddenly, an older man appears behind Kuro. The newcomer asks Red how the test went, and he answers that the response rate to psychic abilities was great. The man suggests lowering the amount of dragon material in the system to make control easier. Red then comments that Unlike the first generation, the new ones can manifest their abilities as easily as breathing. The man introduces himself as Charlie Smith, the chief of Team 1. Red introduces him as the legend who designed the Psycho Frame, and Kuro introduces himself formally. Charlie explains that the first generation Psycho Frame was rustic, but the second generation will be the best equipment. Red comments that the suit was designed for them since he can barely maneuver it, making Kuro realize he will have to use it. He then imagines the suit being used to face hordes of monstrous creatures. The thought of having to wear that suit and enter real battles terrifies him. As a car approaches, Red bids farewell to Kuro. The sergeant then asks what will happen to the mainframe he tested earlier. Charlie replies that it will have to be dismantled and recycled due to the rarity of the dragon material, but Red suggests leaving it for now, since you never know if someone might be able to use that suit. Daily routine at ARC begins at 5 in the morning, but Lee Han always wakes up at 4. He writes down strategies and records his squad mates' abilities, evaluating them objectively. His psychic powers are still below average, and he can't use the supreme telekinesis instructor Wei told him about. But he discovered an ability that only he, among boys his age, can use. It is absolute precision in using his psychic abilities, allowing him to write while Kuro and Simon can only turn a pencil into dust. Lee Han knows he can surpass anyone in psychic control and must train more to refine his precision. His watch beeps, indicating it's time to leave. Lee Han and his squad run together, keeping pace. Other squads also participate in morning training. Dimitri approaches Lee Han and asks how the dimensional rift he saw the previous day was. He replies that there wasn't much to see, but it was very bright and perfect for a date. The dimensional rift is a remnant of the Dragon Troop's assault, and level 2s were split to observe it. Grossman explains that the rift is a place where Earth and another world connected, and the theory is that it influenced the emergence of psychics. He reassures them, saying it will be a good experience and that there is no danger, since the rift has shown no activity for 10 years. Lee Han asks if psychics feel something strange when approaching it, and Dimitri confirms it's a feeling of dizziness. He then runs off, encouraging everyone to do their best again. The morning sun illuminates the ARC complex. Lee Han informs his team that they will gather at the helipad at 10 in the morning, and that they have free time after the meal. Jose comments that it feels like they're going on a field trip. The squad leader then dismisses his team. Wei Chen approaches Lee Han and invites him to have breakfast with him. Lee Han recognizes him as John, the leader of Squad 10, who feels honored to be remembered. After Silence's defeat, Squad 10 was one of the few that managed to beat Squad 13. John says he learns a lot from Lee Han's strategies and wanted a chance to talk, but his colleague says he is nothing compared to him. On the way to their destination, a helicopter flies over the ocean. Major Kang explains that they are headed to Sinuiju, one of the places where the gates opened, and that North Korea turned the region into a land of the dead. He continues, saying that South Korea had to accept the refugees, which caused social and financial chaos. Kasim asks if South Korea is Lee Han's homeland, and he confirms that it is for both him and Gijo. As they approach the dimensional rift, the pilot announces they have arrived in Sinuiju. The rear hatch of the helicopter opens as they approach the rift. Andy and the other cadets feel a crushing pressure coming from the rift. He feels as though he could be swallowed whole at any moment. All squad members struggle to withstand the force emanating from the place. Other helicopters also fly in formation around the dimensional rift area. On the flight back, squad members complain about the exhaustion and horrible sensation the place caused them. Lee Han watches the landscape through the helicopter window in silence. He then spots another aircraft flying beside theirs and identifies it as Squad 10. From the window of the other helicopter, John gives a thumbs up. Lee Han returns the gesture with a smile. Suddenly, an attack hits Squad 10's aircraft. Lee Han watches the scene, shocked by what just happened. The aircraft carrying his comrades explodes in midair. Kato wonders what that light just now was. Then he hears through the comms that Squad 10 was completely annihilated. He remembers greeting Jong Gijo for the first time that morning. Meanwhile, a voice repeatedly calls for Lee Han. Grossman grabs him and urgently orders all squad members to parachute out. He warns that the aircraft will crash soon and that he will contact HQ for reinforcements, telling everyone to hurry. Lee Han and his teammates acknowledge the order and prepare for the jump. Immediately, several squad members jump from the aircraft. Grossman gives the final command to jump, and Lee Han responds affirmatively. Then he orders the boy to gather the squad members on the ground and assume command if the main instructor does not show up. But Lee Han is hit by an attack while trying to confirm the order. The falling aircraft is struck by a second shot. Grossman rushes forward and pushes Lee Han out. Then the aircraft explodes and sends the instructor flying. Alone, Lee Han continues falling toward the forest. Lee Han remembers the instructor being swallowed by the explosion. He gets tangled in the parachute cords on the branches of a tree. Then the boy catches his breath and tells himself he needs to stay calm. Lee Han says he was trained for this and that he needs to find the other squad members. He decides to head toward the smoke, assuming it might be a signal from Jose. The boy then draws his combat knife to cut the cords. After freeing himself, He moves carefully through the forest. Suddenly, he hears noise coming from the bushes. Someone appears from behind, and Lee Han turns into a combat stance. But it was Jung Gijo, and the boy asks how he got there. He explains that he saw him jumping last, and that in situations like this, they need to regroup with the leader. Lee Han then says they need to regroup as fast as possible, surprising Jung Gijo with his judgment. The two run through the forest, marking their trail so they won't get lost. They finally reach the location of the smoke and find the wreckage of an aircraft. Lee Han identifies the craft as Unit 2 and concludes that Squad 8 must have been aboard. Inside the aircraft, they find the bodies of the other squad members. Jung Gijo reacts in horror at the sight. He says that if they hadn't escaped, they would have ended up like them. Then Jung Gijo turns and vomits while Lee Han remains still. He turns to Lee Han and asks if nothing affects him, but the boy replies that it isn't the first time he has seen a corpse, and that they need to hurry. Lee Han looks forward with determination. A huge creature appears over the wreckage of the aircraft. He identifies it as a werewolf. Lee Han tells Jung Gijo to look for something useful inside the aircraft while he distracts it, but his companion suggests they flee. He explains that if they turn their backs, they will die, and that they need to kill the creature right there. The werewolf leaps toward them. Its tail wraps around Lee Han's arm. He shouts for Jung Gijo to get out of the way. Immediately, his companion throws himself aside. Lee Han is dragged by the creature's tail while Jung Gijo runs toward the aircraft. Jung Gijo expresses his desire to keep running and escape. Then Lee Han uses his knife to cut the tail that was holding him. "Free!" He shouts for Jung Gijo to get inside the aircraft. But the werewolf charges toward the boy again. A burning branch falls and strikes the creature's head, interrupting the attack. The creature then rises and launches a claw strike. Lee Han dodges the blow, which slams into a tree beside him. At the entrance of the aircraft, Jung Gijo hesitates, considering using his partner as bait to escape. He then scolds himself, calling himself a loser. Jung Gijo decides not to be a coward and runs back into the fight, stating that he would never betray his partner. The werewolf prepares to attack Lee Han again. Meanwhile, Jung Gijo finds a weapon in the wreckage, but realizes there is no ammunition. Lee Han notices that the tentacle he cut just regenerated. The creature corners him, and he wonders if this is the end for him. An object is thrown and strikes the werewolf squarely. Lee Han watches the creature standing right in front of him and calls for Gijo. Then Jung Gijo appears holding the weapon's handle. He apologizes to Lee Han for being late. The creature turns and now focuses on its new opponent, but the werewolf is hit by a second projectile and recoils. Jung Gijo says he knew Lee Han would observe his actions and react accordingly. He shouts that he trusted him because he was smart. The creature turns and charges at Jung Gijo. Lee Han throws his knife to his companion as the monster closes in on him. The werewolf knocks Jung Gijo to the ground. He is pinned down by the creature. Then the monster opens its jaws to attack him. Lee Han's knife pierces the creature, preventing the attack. Lee Han now holds the complete weapon, which has reassembled itself. Under the werewolf, Jung Gijo asks if the creature is dead. Lee Han congratulates him for a good job, and his companion complains that his body feels like it is splitting apart. Then he helps him walk through the forest, saying that ARC's rescue unit will come. Somewhere else, Jose and the other squad members wait around a campfire, confident that Lee Han will see the smoke. Qasim agrees, stating that their leader always makes the best decisions. Nearby, two members from another squad comment on how confident Squad 13 is in their leader. Then a noise in the bushes catches everyone's attention, and Jose asks if it's Lee Han, but it's Squad 9 emerging from the darkness of the forest. The leader of the group asks if they also fell and got scattered, but Jose denies it. One of the newcomers explains that they were ambushed and only they managed to survive. Jose then asks if they encountered the werewolf, while two figures approach from behind. It's Lee Han helping Jung Gijo, and Jose calls out to them. Lee Han reveals that there were 3 hunter-type Ilu tribes controlling the werewolf as if it were a hunting dog. The others panic for having no weapons or equipment, questioning if they will die, but Lee Han turns to everyone and orders them to stay focused. Lee Han announces that he has a plan and asks for everyone's strength. He explains that the rescue unit will take 5 hours and that they will build a fortress to endure until then. 2 hours later, all preparations were finished. Lee Han comments that since they are all psychics, it was possible. One of the cadets questions if it's okay to leave the place so illuminated, but another explains that werewolves have night vision. Del Simon approaches Lee Han, saying he needs to ask something, even if the rescue comes. He asks what will happen if that lightning hits the rescue team and if they will know about the situation. Lee Han replies that they should worry about that after they survive, making Del realize that he already knew about it. Del reflects on how real battles are grim compared to the competitions he had with his classmates. Then a threatening presence emerges from the dark forest. All the cadets immediately take combat positions. A voice shouts Kuro's name, who activates his ability. A force field expands and covers the entire fortress. The other cadets are surprised by the intensity of Kuro's ability. One of the lookouts alerts that a beast is approaching from the 6 o'clock direction. Lee Han orders the dart launching unit to get ready to focus fire on the target and advances with Knuth. He instructs everyone to throw the spears with psychic energy as if they were pushing them. The unit then launches their projectiles simultaneously. The spears strike the creature directly. Lee Han and Del Simon shout the command for the next attack. The two advance and strike the monster with their spears. But Del is hit by one of the creature's tentacles. He is thrown far away and Lee Han shouts his name. On the ground, Del tells them not to worry about him. The monster recovers from the attacks while the archer unit prepares. Immediately, a rain of arrows hits the creature. Lee Han runs and asks Kuro for the next location. Kuro informs that two beasts are approaching from the 12 o'clock direction. Lee Han orders Jose to ignite the barricades. The two creatures retreat in front of the wall of flames. Lee Han orders them to attack the first beast that crossed the fire. Then the creature leaps over the flames towards them and the boy gives the attack command. Immediately, the monster is hit by several spears mid-air. The creature falls into the fire and roars. Lee Han turns to the last creature remaining. The launcher unit attacks again, hitting the monster, but it shields itself with its back, and one of the cadets wonders if the plan is to wait until they run out of spears. Lee Han realizes that the creature is not irrational and asks Jung Gijo to follow him. He leaps toward the monster, shouting that he will open its mouth. Then, the boy uses his spear to pin one of the creature's tentacles to the ground. With the monster's mouth open, Jung Gijo seizes the chance to thrust his spear into it. He yells for the creature to shut up and die. Kuro shouts Jung Gijo's name, warning him. Lee Han pushes his companion away, taking the hit from the creature's tail in his place. The monster finally collapses, and Lee Han questions if that was its last effort. Jung Gijo says that luckily only his clothes were torn, but then an arrow hits him in the chest. Lee Han shouts his name as he falls to the ground. Kuro apologizes for not being able to prevent everything, but says it's better to be hit by an arrow than by a werewolf. Then, Lee Han asks Kuro to estimate the location of the Elu hunters and announces that it is time to use the surprise attack unit. Domingo, Lee Han's trump card, prepares to act. The surprise attack unit is composed of 3 people. Lee Han had explained that they would use a floating board to move quickly. Kuro would then use his ability to escort them to the hunter's location. The unit advances and attacks the Elu hunters before they can raise a barrier. Domingo finishes one of the hunters with his knife. Exhausted, Kuro falls to his knees and says he cannot use his power anymore. Lee Han realizes that everyone has used up their strength, and that if more enemies appear, they will need to flee. Suddenly, he looks toward the darkness of the forest. Several other creatures emerge from between the trees. A new pack of werewolves charges toward the fortress. Lee Han and his companions brace for impact. He realizes that the creatures are trying to surround them, and that there must be a leader somewhere. Then the boy spots something among the enemies. A different werewolf, the White Fang, emerges as the leader of the pack. The creature stares at the cadets with its teeth exposed. A dark substance begins emerging from the ground and locking Lee Han's feet. He is immobilized and states that the feeling of despair is beginning to trap him. The White Fang howls and its command echoes throughout the forest. Lee Han wonders what they should do now. He then looks up at the sky and sees a set of lights approaching. Hope rises in his eyes. Lee Han breaks free from the dark substance and shouts that they can survive. He orders everyone to take their spears back because they only need to endure a little longer. Kuro agrees, saying that there is only a little more left. Kuro prepares for the imminent attack. The pack of werewolves, led by the White Fang, charges the cadets. Lee Han shouts that they are coming. Then, a massive rescue craft emerges from the skies and fires a container. The strike hits the ground, causing a massive explosion in the middle of the pack. The shockwave of the explosion throws the cadets backward. A soldier in mechanized armor emerges from the container, stepping on the remains of a werewolf. He states that it is a miracle they survived for so long. Jose stretches his hand toward the sunlight. He looks at the sky and says it was a miracle. Sitting on a bench next to Del Simon, Jose comments that half of the troops died, but they survived. He continues, saying that the psycho frame was incredible. Jose recalls how the armor's weapon annihilated the werewolves with ease, but he remembers that despite the terrifying moment, everyone was celebrating and shouting for having survived. Del Simon looks at Lee Han, who remains silent. Even during the celebration, he seemed to be thinking about something. Ever since they returned from the dimensional rift, the small rivalries between squads became insignificant. In the psychiatric ward, Dmitry Vladimirovich Petrov calls out to Lee Han. He confesses that he despised him before, but now he is relieved to see him alive. Dmitry admits that, as Lee Han had said, he was not prepared to kill or watch someone be killed. But he says that this time he realized who their true enemies are. Back in his room, Lee Han states to himself that they need to become much stronger. Suddenly, a fist is pressed against the wall of his room. Then, the fist punches through the wall with a single blow. Lee Han turns around, surprised by the intrusion. Through the hole, A holographic message summons Lee Han to an emergency meeting. He temporarily fixes the wall, but wonders who would break in like that. Lee Han then walks down the corridor followed by Silence, whom he considers truly insane. He turns and asks who called the meeting. Silence types a message on his wrist communicator. He then sends the message to Sergeant Red, asking him to stop bothering him. Lee Han simply agrees and wonders if he dislikes him because of the last competition. They arrive at one of ARC's main buildings. The two walk through the lobby toward the meeting room. John Red turns and asks if they called him. Lee Han and Silence approach where John Red and Del Simon are seated. Silence leans in close to Lee Han. Del Simon remains seated in silence. John Red tells him to stop loitering and sit down, warning that this will take a while. In a meeting room, an officer reports that a quarter of Level 2 died in the incident during training. Alexander LaCour, ARC's head of state, states that they must interrogate the commander responsible to reveal the truth. He informs them that the Supreme Council's final decision was to blame Chief Instructor Grossman for everything. John Red and the other officers in the room prepare to discuss the incident. The officer explains that based on the recordings, the attack appears to have been organized by Elu mages, not just low-ranking werewolves and hunters. An officer comments that it is the first time the Elu mages have appeared since the war, and that they are also capable of opening portals. He continues, saying that the war may happen sooner than the prophecy predicted. Another officer then asks if they should not awaken the Oracle. John Red informs them that the only letter remaining for the team code is W, and gives them the choice between white or whiskey. Del Simon, Lee Han, and Silence sit together, waiting for the decision. Lee Han and Del are surprised to learn they will form a temporary squad for special operations. Silence types on his communicator and chooses the option white. Del Simon and Lee Han agree and also choose the same option. John Red then announces that the squad's codename will be Whiskey. He leans back comfortably on the sofa and prepares to explain the mission objectives. Meanwhile, LaCour reflects that although it would be good to have the Oracle now, there may come a moment when they will need him more urgently. He then turns and asks Sergeant Red's opinion. John Red agrees to wait for the Oracle, but asks for authority to form a team. He states that they will capture the targets alive to torture them, as it is the easiest method to obtain information. Their mission is to capture the Elu mages in Sinwiju. Octo welcomes the Level 2 newcomers, instructing them to first choose their standard dragon weapons. Lee Han holds one of the weapons and analyzes it. Then, the spear blade activates, and Octo explains that the material is storing his psychic energy. Del Simon asks if there are other forms, such as a thinner and longer blade. He responds that customized weapons can only be requested at Level 3, and Del agrees. Octo then presents the next piece of equipment, holding a small spherical device. The object begins to float in the air. Lee Han recognizes it as an air bit. Octo confirms that it is the smaller and lighter version, with all functions removed except for personal maneuvering. Lee Han is shown with his full tactical gear, activating the device on his back. The man wishes the squad good luck, who run toward a helicopter. Their destination is the Shinuiju Dimensional Rift. To avoid bombardment, they will walk from that area to the operation zone. Del Simon informs them that the name of the operation is Mage Hunt. He concludes by saying that the goal is to capture the target alive and return as they advance through the terrain. Lee Han defines the search line order as Silence, himself, and Simon, respectively. John Red questions him about the reason for his inclusion in that operation. In a flashback, Lee Han says that there are much stronger Level 3 members, and John agrees, if he were only looking at overall combat ability. But he explains that from a strategic perspective, the group led by Lee Han managed to survive without equipment while fighting the minions. John Red continues, saying that this is not his only strength, since most who return from the dimensional rift suffer from psychological trauma. He states that when placed in an irrational environment like a battlefield, humans are bound to break at some point. John concludes that from that perspective, Lee Han is a monster, and that at one point he thought he was a psychopath. Back in the present, Del Simon reflects that the only thing Lee Han lacks is real-life experience. It is for this experience that Sergeant Red selected Simon and him. A memory shows a crowd celebrating Lee Han's victory against a Level 3 opponent. Del Simon was in the middle of the group, celebrating the feat. In the present, he observes Silence and Lee Han, determined to show who is superior during the operation. The squad leader announces that they will take a break and split into two teams. The group finds themselves in a destroyed area near a forest. The two teams separate to rest among the rubble. Lee Han observes the forest right in front of him. He remembers the members of his squad who did not return, believing that they are somewhere around there. Then he turns and sees Silence putting on his helmet. Silence adjusts the equipment on his head. Lee Han offers to turn his back, suggesting that he take off the helmet for a moment. But Silence gestures with his hands, refusing the offer. The helmet visor displays the message, "I am not hot," and Li Han simply agrees. A moment later, the leader warns that normal communication devices will not work past that point. He informs them that they will switch to a squad local network as the group enters the woods. Silence moves stealthily through the trees. His interface alerts him about the presence of 2 Elu scouts ahead. The 2 targets are seen getting closer and closer. The rest of the team points their weapons, but the leader orders them not to shoot. He then asks Silence to take care of the situation. Silence rushes forward and attacks the 2 scouts at once. The message "End" appears on Silence's helmet, and Li Han comments that his ability is a cheating tool made for assassination. In a fast simulation, Silence positions himself crouched in the forest near one of the scouts. Back to reality, he observes the 2 targets moving through the trees. Then he prepares to attack the scouts, but a voice asks Silence to wait. Li Han suggests that it would be better to follow them instead of killing them, and Del Simon questions the reason. He explains that because they are walking toward the rift with their guard down, they are probably returning from a reconnaissance mission. John Red praises Li Han's logic and orders Silence to follow them at a distance. Del Simon becomes frustrated, as he had only thought of killing them, and promises himself that he will still defeat Li Han. Silence then begins running through the forest. His camera records the 2 scouts as they move away. The group follows them to a place where several figures are gathered in front of the dimensional rift. There they spot the Elu Mage, the target of the mission. The team leader points to the gem on the mage's staff. He then explains that it is a psychic crystal, which they learned about during training. Li Han and Del Simon react upon realizing what a psychic crystal is. The leader explains that the crystal stores a massive amount of energy and was likely used to bring down their aircraft. He adds that at the moment, the object appears to have enough charge for at least 1 more shot. The opponents consist of 1 Elu Mage and 6 warriors, totaling 7 enemies. The leader orders all members to regroup with Silence to begin Operation Mage Hunt. He warns that Elu Mages can teleport, and therefore Silence will capture him before the team is spotted. The rest of the group will eliminate the remaining Elu, and the leader emphasizes that there is no more room for mistakes. Li Han observes the area and questions what those things set in front of the altar are. His eyes activate to see better. He then realizes that the objects on the ground are bodies. Among the dead, he recognizes his squad mates. Li Han shouts Kasim's name. Li Han shouts the names of Kasim and Domingo, while someone tries to call his attention. John Red notices that his psychic energy is leaking, and wonders why he is acting that way. He knows that if Li Han continues like that, everyone will be in danger, since Elu Mages can sense psychic energy. John Red decides that there is no other choice. He then orders squad whiskey for everyone to retreat. Silence and Del Simon question the retreat order. John Red approaches Li Han, deciding that he will handle the situation himself. Del Simon realizes that the enemies have not detected them yet and hopes the energy will not leak further, but John Red prepares to act. Then he rushes toward Li Han. Del Simon watches the scene, surprised by the action. At that very moment, the Elu Mage finally detects their presence. John Red strikes the back of Li Han's neck, while the mage turns toward the group. Li Han collapses unconscious, calling for Sergeant Red. On the ground, John Red holds Li Han and asks if he finally regained his rationality. On the ground, John Red orders Li Han to assume command as second in command and advance. Li Han announces over the radio that they are retreating and requests cover. Li Han helps John Red withdraw from the battlefield. Looking back, Li Han laments the situation. The Elu Mage then utters an incantation. His warriors advance under his command. Silence draws his blades and prepares for combat. He clashes his sword with that of one of the Elu warriors. Silence continues to fight, facing multiple opponents at once. Del Simon joins the fight, blocking the attack of another warrior. He fires an attack at one of the enemies while another strikes from behind. A warrior throws him to the ground, and Del realizes it is too late to react. The enemy corners him, ready to deliver the final blow. The warrior raises his axe and questions if that is the end. But at the last moment, a figure appears and blocks the attack that would have been fatal. Del Simon looks at the wound on his chest. He sees Silence standing over a defeated enemy, and wonders how Li Han managed to beat him. The Elu Mage shouts a command to his troops. The remaining warriors then retreat toward the dimensional rift. Del Simon asks if they gave up chasing them. As the group approaches, Li Han takes responsibility for the error in strategy. Silence then punches Li Han in the face. He knocks him to the ground with the impact of the blow. Next, Del Simon touches Silence's shoulder and says, "That is enough." John Red, wounded, states that it is now impossible to follow the plan, as the enemies will strengthen their vigilance. Li Han stands up and insists that they must continue with the strategy. Silence grabs Li Han's head. He strikes him again in the face. Del Simon yells at Silence, pointing his weapon at him. He warns him that Li Han is the commander, and that he will not stand still if the aggression continues. Silence remains motionless while Del Simon grabs him by the shoulder. He then brushes Del's hand away and folds his arms. Del Simon turns to Li Han. He reminds him that the current situation is his fault, and that if the new strategy is bad, They will retreat even if they have to beat him up. But for now, he will listen before judging, admitting that Lee Han is the smartest among the second-year students. Lee Han asks them to listen and states that the current overall situation is not bad. Del Simon questions his statement. He confirms it and asks what the reason was for ending the strategy with an intensive surprise attack. Lee Han explains that it was because of the Elu Mage's psychic fire and the concern that he would escape via teleport, but now they no longer need to worry about that. Del agrees about the fire since the mage used what remained, but asks why he thinks the enemy will not use teleportation. Lee Han responds that the cunning and cautious monster did not escape even with his life on the line. He continues, saying that the mage tried to annihilate them even if it consumed the psychic crystal, and then ordered the withdrawal and protection of his soldiers. Lee Han concludes that none of that would have happened if the mage could teleport, and that there must be a reason for his inability to leave. The group gathers in a forest clearing to discuss the plan. Del Simon approaches Silence and agrees with Lee Han's strategy. Del Simon asks Lee Han to tell them the strategy. He holds the airbit in his hand. Lee Han declares that he himself will capture the Elu Mage. He explains that he will perform a surprise attack from the opposite side of the rift. Then he asks the two of them to draw the mage's attention from the front. Lee Han continues, saying that it will be difficult for the enemy to detect him while passing through the rift's energy, and his vision will be impaired. Del Simon listens, and Lee Han says that the same applies to him, in addition to it being hard to secure a clear line of sight. He asks if Del can control the airbit while enduring the intense pressure of the rift. Lee Han warns him that a single mistake will result in death, but states that he has confidence in his psychic control. He says he did not volunteer to have his error covered. Lee Han concludes by explaining that he did so because his probability of success is the highest. Silence observes Lee Han, concluding that he is like a machine, a cold bastard who probably saw his squad mates in the pile of corpses. Del Simon counters that if he felt nothing upon seeing that, he could not even be considered human. Even with everything going wrong because of his mistake, Lee Han was able to observe the enemy and plan the next course of action. Upon reaching his position, Lee Han considers himself lucky for making it in time, understanding why Squad 13 trusts him completely. He then launches several reconnaissance drones through the dimensional rift. Lee Han walks toward the edge, knowing that a single mistake means imminent death. He activates the airbit in his hand. The 15-minute timer on his wrist reaches 0. Lee Han prepares for the attack. The plan begins, and Silence and Del Simon advance toward the battlefield. Lee Han launches himself into the rift, using the airbit to boost his jump. He steps on the device to maintain balance in the air. On the front line, Del Simon and Silence run to confront the enemies. The Elu Mage turns toward the two. Del Simon realizes that there are now more Elu warriors present. One of the Elo warriors asks if all the guards patrolling the area have regrouped. Silence advances and attacks multiple opponents at once. Del Simon fires his weapon, but the enemy blocks the shots. The Elu warrior is hit and retreats. Another enemy advances, attacking one of the soldiers. Del Simon defends against the strike of one of the warriors. He then readies his weapon for another shot. Silence fires a projectile from his wrist device. The attack hits the Elu warrior's head dead on. Del Simon and Silence prepare for the next wave of enemies. He tells Lee Han not to fail their first mission. Meanwhile, Lee Han navigates through the interior of the dimensional rift. He feels the same sensation as before. He balances himself on the airbit, recognizing what is about to come. Lee Han encounters the manifestation of the dragon fear within the rift. Lee Han tells himself that it is only an illusion. He orders himself not to hesitate as the creature charges to attack him. Then he bites down hard on his own tongue. The young man breaks free from the trance. He pushes forward straight through the illusion's mouth. Meanwhile, Del Simon fires at one of the Elo warriors. He then reports that only 2 enemies remain. The remaining warriors position themselves in front of the mage. Silence explains that they will not advance because they need to protect the mage. Del Simon aims his weapon at them again. The mage reacts and prepares an energy shield. The 2 warriors join him, reinforcing the barrier. Del Simon acknowledges that they saw where the weapon was aiming and created a perfect defense. The mage states that it is a perfect defense from the front, as a figure appears behind him. Lee Han appears behind the mage, ready to strike. Lee Han attacks the mage from behind, causing him to drop his staff from the impact. The 2 remaining warriors turn, surprised by the attack. Silence then activates his teleportation ability. He appears behind the 2 warriors and defeats them instantly. Lee Han holds the mage and injects a substance into his neck. He hurries the injection to take effect, fearing the enemy may still teleport. The injected liquid begins reacting within the mage's body. The substance spreads, causing the enemy to start disintegrating. The mage screams in denial as his head dissolves. Then, the mage's body explodes in a wave of energy, and Lee Han laments the situation. He observes the result of the explosion. Lee Han holds the mage's body and asks if they succeeded. The scene shifts to Ark's base. located on an island in the middle of the ocean. Back at the base, Lee Han watches John Red, who is seated with his hand bandaged. John Red tells them not to stand around staring like dogs that need to pee. John Red asks Lee Han to stop apologizing, saying he can use a prosthetic and receive disability pay. Lee Han agrees, and John states that it was the correct decision to proceed with the plan. He says he finished the report and needs the details of the captured mage, and Lee Han asks if beings from another world can be interrogated. John Red explains that in Ark there is a person with telepathy, the only one in the world. Then Silence appears at the doorway. John invites him in, saying they have finished talking. Silence approaches and asks through his device if he is feeling well. John Red jokes that he was thinking of going on a diet, but now he doesn't need to anymore since his body is lighter. Lee Han reacts upon noticing that Silence is laughing. The two continue laughing together. He observes the scene, finding it hard to believe that Sergeant Red is one of the few people capable of talking with silence. John then dismisses them, calling them old man and fake ninja. He says he will reminisce about his lost leg and drown in deep thoughts. Once outside, Silence sends a message apologizing for hitting him, saying he would have done the same. Lee Han replies that he deserved it for putting everyone in danger, but Silence concludes that he overcame the situation and now understands Sergeant Red's high expectations. As they walk, Lee Han comments that he does not think Sergeant Red can distinguish what he likes from what he dislikes. He adds that regardless, the sergeant still intimidates them. Upon reaching a fork, Lee Han says goodbye to Silence. The two wave at each other in farewell. Lee Han starts walking away, but Silence remains still. The boy turns for a moment before continuing his path. Silence then sends him a message, telling him to work hard and join the level 3s soon. A memory shows the conversation with Del Simon about the rift pressure and air bit control. Del had warned him that a single mistake would be fatal, but Lee Han stated he had confidence in his psychic control ability. Lee Han recalls saying that he was not volunteering to cover up his mistake. He did it because he was the most likely to succeed in the mission. A private jet lands on a runway, and a group of people disembarks. Several visitors of different nationalities walk across the airstrip. One of the visitors, Inspector James Rue from the United States, loosens his tie and complains about the heat. They are greeted by a welcoming team on the runway. An officer is informed of the inspection committee's arrival and orders that they be safely escorted to the conference room. 3 soldiers salute the committee, thanking them for coming. They are informed that they will be escorted and will receive communication devices with a guide map installed. A soldier offers to accompany Inspector James Rue, but he says that the device alone is enough. He turns, stating that he will take care of himself, since inspectors have that authority. The soldier reluctantly agrees while James Rue walks away. Suddenly, the inspector stops walking, which surprises the soldier. He turns with a smile and asks where the bastard named Lee Han is. James Rue finds Squad 13 and offers them a handful of candies. He says he is giving them treats because they are like nephews to him. Lee Han informs him that they need to continue training, and the inspector agrees not to interrupt them further. Lee Han orders everyone to gear up and head to the shooting range, while Inspector James Rue identifies him. James Rue recalls that, based on level 1 data, he was nothing special, but became famous for his achievements. He then waits outside the shooting range. The man stretches against the fence. James complains that there have been no competitions since the Rift incident, and that while others rest, that squad trains relentlessly. He keeps observing the training through the fence. Then the squad exits the area, and the inspector wonders if they are done. The leader announces that everyone is heading to the weapons facility. James Rue watches them leave, commenting that they are really persistent bastards. The scene shifts to the training gym. Lee Han approaches Kuro and says that today he will train with him. Kuro reacts to the news. Lee Han instructs him to take position for combat. Kuro wonders why Lee Han wants to fight him. He realizes that this does not seem like normal training. Lee Han explains that in the dimensional rift he learned something extremely important. He states that it is impossible to fight using only psychic abilities, so Kuro needs to become a complete fighter. Kuro may have been weak in level 1, but now that their bodies have transcended, everything comes down to mental capability. Then, Lee Han moves in for the attack and warns that he is coming for Kuro. Kuro reacts to his rapid advance. Lee Han delivers a series of strikes with his staff. Kuro manages to predict his attacks. He then blocks the strike with his staff. Kuro braces himself on the ground, prepared for the next move. Then he manages to block multiple simultaneous attacks. Lee Han continues to pressure him with a sequence of blows. Kuro says that it is suffocating and that he feels like he is going to die, while Lee Han observes him. The two then clash their staffs in a stalemate. Lee Han informs him that even with premonition, he cannot win by only defending. He then instructs him to try attacking, and Kuro questions the order. Kuro pants heavily after the exchange of blows. He then clenches his teeth, preparing for the next move. With a shout, he charges forward and attacks with his staff. Lee Han observes his opponent's strike, but the attack misses the target and Kuro loses his staff. Lee Han instructs him to attack with his eyes open and to grip his spear more firmly. Kuro apologizes for the mistake. Then, Lee Han challenges him to attack with everything he has next time. The order surprises him. Jose and Nuthmeier react to what Lee Han said. The two fighters take position again at the center of the gym. Kuro prepares for the new confrontation. Lee Han warns that from now on, he will attack with everything he has, and that Kuro must do the same. The other members comment that if they judged by weapon handling alone, Lee Han would win, but with psychic abilities, the result is uncertain. Lee Han asks what the problem is, and whether he is worried about getting hurt, irritating Kuro. Kuro admits that he honestly does not know why Lee Han is acting that way and apologizes, but he states that he is sure there is a reason, simply because it is him. Then, Kuro declares that he will do exactly what was asked. Multiple spears then fly around him, because he believes in Lee Han. Wei Chen asks Lee Han what brings him there today. He offers him oolong tea and invites him to try it. Lee Han tastes the drink and thanks him, saying that it is delicious. Wei Chen finds his reaction cute and comments that it is nice when they can act like people their age. Lee Han then explains that he actually came because he is worried about Kuro. Wei Chen repeats his name, surprised by the reason for the visit. The boy reveals his concern, saying that Kuro hesitates to attack and that this could kill him someday. Wei Chen explains that humans adjust their psychological distance based on the weapons they receive, and Lee Han questions the term. He clarifies that it is the resistance to harming others, which is difficult even for soldiers in close combat, but they can easily kill civilians with a remote detonator. Lee Han states that it is too brutal for Kuro to kill under command, and that he seems to need an opportunity. Wei Chen suggests that it should be like on the deserted island, when he acted because he had complete faith in Lee Han. Back in the gym, Kuro is surrounded by dozens of floating spears. Lee Han opens his jacket, understanding what psychological distance is. Jose and Knuth Meyer observe the scene, commenting that Kuro has no middle ground and wondering if they should stop them. James Rue watches the fight from afar and wonders if that is the power of a rank A. Lee Han admits that Kuro's ability is incredible, but also very characteristic of him. Knuth Meyer comments that Kuro can predict Lee Han's movements, and Jose adds that it will be impossible to approach without being hit. Kuro launches one of his spears in Lee Han's direction. Lee Han manages to dodge the attack. He realizes that even when launched with telekinesis, the spear has the same level of power as when he throws it directly. Jose questions whether Lee Han will have to parry the attacks instead of dodging, and Knuth Meyer responds that it is not something just anyone can do. Lee Han provokes him, asking if he is trying to belittle him for launching only one spear, and asks if he will be able to launch them all by the end of the day. Kuro reacts to his provocation. Lee Han reminds him that eventually he will have to attack him with the spear in his hand. Then he advances to attack Kuro directly, but the attack is intercepted by one of the floating spears. Lee Han warns him that there are not many floating weapons left. With a shout, Kuro prepares for the final attack. He jumps into the air and launches all of his remaining spears at once. Lee Han uses his jacket as a shield. He manages to block all the spears at once. The impact of the attacks throws him backward. Knuth Meyer and Jose are surprised to see that he used telekinesis on his jacket, and Lee Han shouts for Kuro to extend his spear. The two approach one another rapidly. Lee Han breaks Kuro's staff with his bare hands. He then stands face to face with his opponent. Lee Han flicks Kuro's forehead. He praises him for keeping his eyes open during the attack. Then he squeezes Kuro's hand firmly. Jose and Knuth Meyer call him a bloodless, tearless battle machine, while Lee Han says that Kuro is too soft. He asks why Kuro aimed at his body when throwing the weapons, saying it would have been harder to avoid if he had aimed randomly. Kuro replies that he could not risk hitting his head by mistake, and Lee Han simply laments his response. James Rue observes the scene, concluding that Lee Han is far beyond the rumors, and that he can tell him what Ark is not telling them. He then approaches the group and asks for a moment of their time. James Rue approaches and calls out to Lee Han. The boy asks if he is referring to what happened in the dimensional rift. Lee Han states that he has already sent everything he knows in his report, but James Rue insists on hearing about his actions directly. The inspector invites him to sit and tells him to get ready. He then reveals that he has a special ability enhanced through infinite concordance. The name of the ability is super reaction, which is not psychic in nature. He explains that if he agrees with a person at a crucial moment, they will feel good. This can cause the person to reveal information they did not intend to, and he demonstrates an exaggerated reaction of agreement. James Rue gets close to Lee Han, asking enthusiastically what happened next. The boy becomes confused and asks what he means by what happened next. The inspector realizes that was all the information in the report and asks if there is nothing more to the story. Lee Han confirms that all other details are in the report, leaving James Rue frustrated with his cunning. He then says goodbye, saying he will go train a bit more, and walks away. Lee Han reflects that he received orders to keep his mouth shut about squad whiskey, and that Inspector Rue will get nothing out of him. As the boy walks away, James Rue takes out his phone and makes a call. On the phone, James Rue asks them to check if Lee Han has been at Archie since the Dimensional Rift incident. Meanwhile, Lee Han and his squad are in their morning training. Other squad members run right behind him. The whole group exercises together on the track. They keep the running pace in sync. Dimitri runs with great intensity. He approaches Lee Han to greet him, and Lee Han comments on his usual energy. Dimitri responds that he needs to keep himself busy at any cost. He then points to an inspector from Russia who is observing the training. Dimitri says that the man bothered them for days, saying that they need to fight for their nation after the war. Lee Han questions what they would fight against, and Dimitri reveals that ARC will be dissolved when the war ends. The group continues running on the track. With a serious expression, Dimitri calls out to Lee Han again. He reveals that the higher-ups plan to start a war to dominate the world after they defeat the dragons. The news leaves Lee Han completely shocked.